Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. We are on the road today, on remote, coming at you live from Belliston Jewelry in O-Town. Anybody who's north of Salt Lake City right now, stop what you're doing. Go to 1155 36th Street in Ogden. We're right around the corner from Weber State University. I know all of you guys have been procrastinating. Nobody has the Valentine's thing all figured out just yet. Fellas, it's on Friday, okay? Belliston has incredible deals going on. I've spent the last 20 minutes or so looking at the incredible selection they've got here. Something for every single budget, for every single size, every single taste. Come up here. If you spend $129 or more, free roses as well. A dozen roses with the jewelry purchase of over $129. So they're hooking me up. They're hooking you up. Come see us today. I'll be here for the next 3 hours talking about, you guessed it, the end of the football season, the end of an incredible year of NFL football. And as we talked about last week, when the NFL season is over, the football season as we know it is over. Although the commercials on the Super Bowl yesterday for the UFL, they wanted to remind everybody, make everybody aware that the spring football leagues are coming, and you only have, several weeks before you have to, or before you have an opportunity, I should say, to tune in and watch those things. So, look, it's an opportunity. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my levels here at the request of James. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear for everyone. All right, James says we're good now. In any case, lots to discuss on the show. Scott Mitchell is going to join us. Scott Mitchell, Utah football legend and longtime quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he can help us get to the bottom of what the bleep happened to the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. In a Super Bowl chance to win a back-to-back-to-back unprecedented making history, there was a collapse. It was just no points in the first half, hardly any yards in the first half, a single first down in the first half. The point was made on the Dan Patrick Show this morning that it was the first time we have seen since the star turn taken by Patrick Mahomes, it was the first time we have seen the Kansas City Chiefs look overwhelmed. Look like they were completely overmatched. And maybe we are all in the wrong, including
It's a 3rd and 16 for the Chiefs, and a shotgun snap from their own 24. Rolling out of the pocket, Mahomes, lines right. It's intercepted at the 40. And picked off by DeGene, who comes to the near side, the 30. Got it back at the 20, breaks the tackle, the 10, the 5, to the pylon.
It was a stark
touchdown!
There's always these echoes.
Eagles have got a pick six.
Every sport that you watch. And one of the things that we found out about Utah football this year is that, all that consistency, all that culture, all of that that reputation that you have to live up to every single day is heavily dependent on the ability to keep bodies healthy. And Philadelphia, because of that roster that they have put together, they were able to manage the attrition that happens inevitably over a 17-game NFL regular season and a deep run through the playoffs. You're going to have your bumps and bruises. You're going to miss out on having guys in the game or available in the game. And the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to overcome that in back-to-back years. But this year, what did you see? You saw an offensive line that was reshuffled because of injuries and being depleted, going up against one of the best defensive fronts in all of football. And there are just some things that no matter how good your quarterback is or how good your coach is, there are just some things in football that you can't really overcome from an attrition and injury standpoint. We learned that with Utah this year, and it wasn't necessarily the offensive line for the Utes. It was more you can have everything else firing on all cylinders. If the quarterback play is not there, good luck. And the Kansas City Chiefs have the quarterback, they have the coach, they had the defensive coordinator who I don't think had his best game, but they didn't have the offensive line. The offensive line was dominated by that Eagles front. And it wasn't
in the pistol
like
on the NFL logo from the Kansas City 46. Eagles take over first and 10. The shotgun snap, the fake handoff, and Hurts drops back 5, winds up, long arching pass down the middle. It's caught over the shoulder in the end zone. Touchdown, Smith. And that may make it insurmountable. 46-yard touchdown strike. 33-0 Eagles. Wow!
Vic Fangio resisted that temptation.
Wow!
I've got the horse.
33-0 Eagles.
We're going to collapse this.
Wow!
We're going to do it on back-to-back plays in 3 different scenarios in the game. There were 2 different scenarios in the game where the Eagles got back-to-back sacks, one player after another, and then another one where it was a sack and then the pressure that forced an interception on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they knew what they had. They let their guys play, and the credit goes to Nick Sirianni. Should get credit, right? He's like put his former hot seat all the way into a freezer, spray it down with cold water, let it become a block of ice itself. There's absolutely no room for discussion that guy's not the right dude to lead this team moving forward, because they just went out there and they smashed a dynastic power in the NFL. A team that has been to how many consecutive AFC Championship games and how many consecutive Super Bowls. They had a chance to win 3. And the Eagles just poured a bunch of cold water on that and said, not this year, fellas. It wasn't the great game that all of us were rooting for. There are Chiefs fans in Salt Lake City, obviously. It's not necessarily the deepest or broadest of the fan bases that make their home in this state. But there's a lot of folks that have jumped on and shown interest because of the obvious connections, because of the Andy Reid thing, because in years past the Chiefs have had especially some BYU guys that have helped them become the franchise that they are today. But most of us were rooting for a competitive game. We did not get that. Still, I could not look away. I could not turn away. I think that as easy as it is to say, no, just give me a good game, give me a game where, it comes down to one score, a final possession. In a traditional standpoint, that's a much more interesting thing to watch. But how fascinating was it to observe the collapse of a team that never collapses? I mean, you at the very least, you watch this game with a sense of morbid curiosity, because it just doesn't go that way for the Kansas City Chiefs that often. And yes, they showed more vulnerability this season, but a blowout loss in the Super Bowl, nobody had that penciled in. Nobody had that predicted. There was not a single person talking about it before and even after. Even like Bill Cowher on the Dan Patrick Show today was like, well, what did you think was going to happen in this game? And he said what we all thought. It'd probably come down to the last possession, one last opportunity, who's got the ball last. If it's Patrick Mahomes, you know what's going to happen. If it's Jalen Hurts, we have no idea what's going to happen. And instead, it was the Eagles kind of like they had their foot on the gas pedal early, and the Chiefs were able to match it. And then the dam started to break, and the physical dominance of Philadelphia just started to take hold. On Chiefs rundowns, when they're trying to get the box more balanced, and they're trying to get people out of Patrick Mahomes' face, and they're trying to get Pacheco into the game, there was a couple of highlights, and this is one of the things that Twitter is so good at. It allows you to look at things play by play, piece by piece, position group by position group. Because most of us, when you turn it on and you're watching it live, and you're having your dips, and you're having your chips, and you're having your pizza, and you're having your Super Bowl fare, and you're talking to the neighbor, and you're talking to the friends, you're watching the ball, right? And then if you did what you're supposed to do, if you did your homework last night and you were trying to figure out, like, how did this actually happen? It's because the Philadelphia Eagles, and you probably watch the cut-ups, right? And Twitter's a great place to do that. The Philadelphia Eagles, imposed their will. Watch, I'll find it and I'll retweet it for you. Watch how Nolan Smith takes on a pulling guard on a couple of these different plays when they're trying to get the run game going, when the Chiefs are trying to get the run game going. Watch him obliterate a pulling guard, a 315-pound man moving at the full clip as fast as his 315-pound body can go. And watch Nolan Smith recognize that the pull is coming his way, and instead of hunkering down and catching the blow, catching the impact on his shoulder, trying to keep his outside arm free, he just turns himself in and like a missile blows up the pulling guard, creating a pileup, creating a situation where Pacheco's first cut has to be in his own backfield, and then, of course, the swarming Philadelphia Eagles defense takes care of the rest. It wasn't the great balanced game, the evenly matched game that we anticipated that it would be in the Super Bowl and that we hoped that it would be in the Super Bowl, but it was worth watching every single down of that game, probably until the last 2 minutes or so, but worth watching every down of that game to try to figure out how it was happening to a team as well coached, as intelligent as the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was because Philadelphia recognized the advantage they had in this game. We are the more physical team. We are the bigger, badder team. We have a healthier roster right now. And we are just going to go out there and we're going to try to smash mouth our way into a Super Bowl victory. 40-22 final score. This game was really 40-6. I mean, it really got ugly. And the Chiefs, even at halftime, with no points on the board, and Philadelphia feeling it, I was like, just wait, though. Just wait. This could be a 28-3 situation. This is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. These are guys that if anyone in the league is capable of coming back, it's these two individuals and that supporting cast. And the Eagles stayed focused, didn't make halftime adjustments is an overused term. As we've talked to plenty of coaches, players, etc., they're like, dude, I go into the locker room, I use the bathroom, I get a little rah-rah speech from the position coach, and then we're back out on the field. Super Bowl halftime is longer, so you have more time to make those adjustments. Philadelphia avoided the thing that could have been their doom.
Lost Thursday night to the Indiana Pacers, 119-112. Nice save by Flip out front. The first triple on the way. So he's got pulled that light around, didn't he?
Oh, my God.
Up the Chiefs might do. They just continued to execute, went out there, and physically beat up the Kansas City Chiefs. To the point where, like, even Patrick Mahomes looked a little bit rattled. He's a guy who never looks rattled. DeAndre Hopkins drops a wide-open pass, trips himself, and drops a wide-open pass. Like, all of these things that you never see happen to the Kansas City Chiefs happened to the Kansas City Chiefs. 40-22, the final. And like I said, maybe not what you hoped for or expected from a competitiveness standpoint, but every bit as interesting as a one-score game would have been because of the nature with which the Kansas City Chiefs fell to pieces, and the Philadelphia Eagles really put their stamp on this game. James Peterson, I'm on remote, so I can't look through the glass and see James on the other side. And I know he's always busy and he's cutting up sound and he's doing lots of things, so I never want to put James in a bad situation where I'm like, James, what do you think? And then he's not actually ready to go.
Put me in the worst situation, OC. I'm ready.
Okay, James, thankfully I'm not
no,
putting James in that situation
I'm ready to
right
go.
now. But, I mean, look, you watched this game probably with a plate of, I'm going to say, chips, salsa, maybe some wings in front of you. Tell me if I'm wrong. And were you your reaction? Were you in shock? Were you enjoying that level of shock? It was not the tight game that everyone hoped for, but how'd you process it?
Yeah, so it was first with the food. It was 7-layer bean dip, so close with not quite salsa, but 7-layer bean dip, and then Little Smokies.
Oh yeah,
and barbecue chicken sandwich.
Ooh.
So it was pretty good food. I spent the Super Bowl party with the in-laws. They did a good job with the food.
Right.
So shout out to the in-laws for that. But yeah, as far as the game goes, I think I told you before, and I probably brought it up on the show, I wasn't really I've rooted for the Chiefs the last handful of years because I was caught in what we talked about before, tired of the greatness a little bit. But also I really liked your Niners teams over the last handful of years. I really wanted them to win, and I really didn't have that same feeling about this Eagles team. Didn't really care for them very much, and it wasn't for any particular reason. Not out of disrespect or anything, or a dislike of Saquon Barkley or something like that. It's just they didn't pull me. They didn't draw me the way that your Niners teams the last couple of Super Bowls, for example, did. So I was reluctantly kind of rooting for what I thought would be the best story, which is the Chiefs pulling off the three-peat. I was shocked that it looked that lopsided. OC 34-0 at one point. Of course, the Chiefs make it look a little closer with a couple of late touchdowns after it had long been decided, 40-22. But yeah, just could not believe what I was watching. Could not believe that even with some of those injuries on the offensive line, that without the Eagles blitzing, that they could get that much pressure on Mahomes and disrupt their offense that much. Was disappointed that the Chiefs couldn't make it closer and make it more of an entertaining game.
Josh Sweat, 2.5 sacks. Milton Williams, 2 sacks. Jalix Hunt, half a sack in this game. And yes, without creating manufactured pressures, without blitzing, you were able to put the best quarterback in the game on skates and rattle his production. Now, he is still Patrick Mahomes. Finishes the game 21-32, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns. But the interceptions were, the one he threw to Zach Bond was just like, what is happening? How did you miss that? How did the ball end up there? How did you not recognize it? It seemed like he was right in the field of vision. Sometimes these guys kind of like hide out in the coverage, or there'll be an offensive lineman or defensive line's hand right up there. It seemed on all the angles that they played that Patrick Mahomes was able to kind of stare it down. And unfortunately, well, I guess it's based on your perspective. Fortunate if you're an Eagles fan, unfortunate if you're a Chiefs fan. He turned the ball over in an uncharacteristic fashion in this game, and Philadelphia rides that and their own execution to a big-time victory that changes narrative pretty significantly, in my opinion, around Nick Sirianni, hopefully around Vic Fangio, who probably heard all the headlines or read all the headlines and heard all the conversation about his counterpart in this game. How many times did we mention Vic Fangio on the show last week?
Yeah, barely any.
That's probably my bad. And when we did mention Vic Fangio on the show last week, it was to make the point that he is unable to beat Patrick Mahomes. Like, when you brought up Vic Fangio's name, it was just like, yeah, this is maybe a liability here because he can't figure out Mahomes specifically. And then on the opposite side of the conversation, we spent every opportunity, every show, we were just like, yeah, look at Andy Reid, look at Patrick Mahomes, but also look at Steve Spagnuolo. Look what Spags can do with this team. And it was not like he was not a huge part of the narrative yesterday. Again, because you're going up against a different animal in the offensive line, a different animal in Saquon Barkley. And when I say change the narrative, I mean like change the narrative on Jalen Hurts. He had, in my opinion, he had one really bad play in the game, that arm punt of an interception. How many times did Jalen Hurts not only make the right read, make the right throw, but also recognize when it was time for him to use that athleticism, to use that ability to run 11 carries, 72 yards, and a touchdown. But more than the total there, more than any of that, it was him recognizing the moments in which he needed to use that ability, which is so difficult for a player of his reputation to do. A player like Jalen Hurts came into this game with an incredible amount of pressure on him, and the conversation being like, yeah, dude, I don't know if you're elite. Does he have the same ability as Patrick Mahomes to recognize when it's time for him to use his arm? Does he have the same license? We know that he squats 700 pounds, but, like, does he know that you're supposed to be looking downfield and not making it about yourself? Like, all of these questions about Jalen Hurts, I think, are answered and washed away. And when you're given an opportunity in a Super Bowl and you play the way that he played yesterday, put some respect on the young man's name. Or at least remove the, he's a liability tag from him. Because clearly he is not. Like, Patrick Mahomes wasn't going to change the narrative around himself that much in this game. Even with a win, we're just going to, confirm how great we know he is. A bad performance from Patrick Mahomes, he gets the benefit of the doubt, and we say, yeah, but he's still Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's the reason they've been here 5 years in a row. He's the reason that they're the number one team to beat in the NFL until basically he's gone and until Andy Reid is gone. He wasn't going to change his reputation a ton one way or the other. Jalen Hurts came into this one, and if you don't play the way – if Jalen Hurts played the game that Patrick Mahomes played with the bad turnovers and stuff, then how unfair would that narrative have been? How critical would we all have been of Jalen Hurts, and how many of us would have written him off? And instead he goes out and takes advantage of this massive opportunity, just like he did at every juncture of his career. Played great at Alabama, played great at Oklahoma, and sometimes was the victim of circumstance in both of those situations. Now he's here with the Eagles, and the circumstance presents itself for him to go out there and be the best player in the Super Bowl. He takes that opportunity, runs away with it, 40-22, and now his name's in the history books. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts did a ton for his reputation last night, and that goes without saying when you win MVP. But I will say, I feel like Josh Sweat or someone on that Eagles defensive line probably was the bigger reason why they won. OC. I felt like one of those guys should have won MVP.
Well, here's the thing. Defensive MVP is given for a very, very good reason in games like this, because it is almost impossible for a defensive player to affect the game the same way that a quarterback does. I mean, Super Bowl MVP 9 times out of 10 boils down to who was the best quarterback in the game, and those guys were incredible, but it was as much a group effort as anything else. And yes, you could say the same thing about Jalen Hurts because the offensive line helps him so much, but the expectation also matters here. The expectation was that Jalen Hurts was going to come in and he was just going to manage the game, control the situation, and let Saquon Barkley eat and do all that stuff. Jalen Hurts was, when they had the ball in their hands, he was the reason they won the game. And this is an offensively geared game now. Your point is well made that the defense deserves a ton of credit. If you were going to do it, you would have to say the Philadelphia Eagles defense is the MVP of this game. Instead, you hand out a specific defensive MVP award, and you let Jalen Hurts be the offensive MVP because most of us thought that it was going to be Saquon. And by the way, expectations matter a ton in the NFL. That's a big reason why Josh Allen won the league MVP this year instead of Lamar, because his improvement, especially in taking care of the football, was remarkable, and he overcame some things in terms of injuries on his team. And people look and say, well, we didn't expect that Josh Allen was going to take care of the football better than Lamar Jackson did this year, so now we're going to give him an MVP. So Jalen Hurts gets, in this case, the MVP award is kind of a benefit of being doubted, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And he certainly, you look at the numbers, his numbers stand up with many of the Super Bowl MVP winning quarterbacks for sure. So it's not, I don't say that I would have liked it to go to Josh Sweat, for example, instead of him because he just barely put up any great numbers. Like he had almost 300 yards passing, 72 yards rushing, multiple touchdown in each category, couple of passing touchdowns. That we're gonna play the Devontae Smith touchdown that put him up 34-0 in one of our highlights today, OC. So we'll hear Kevin Harlan's call a little bit later from Westwood One that you heard here on the station. But man, what a shocking play that was too, and it just goes to show, middle of this season, we didn't know if Jalen Hurts still had that in him to be able to make that kind of a throw, especially in a big game. And he, even though the game was far out of reach already at that point, it still was like a statement touchdown, in my opinion, for Jalen Hurts. And it's that kind of thing that, like you said, based on the low expectations and putting up the good numbers there, that it probably combined for and making that kind of a statement play. All those things probably combined for him to get that MVP, and it certainly played well enough to be MVP.
One of the most fascinating things to watch next year is how winning a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl MVP affects Jalen Hurts and his actual gameplay week in and week out next season. We'll actually flesh that idea out a little bit more in our next segment. We're here at Belliston Jewelry up in Ogden. O-Town, represent, okay? Come on out to 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner from Weber State University. All you fellows out there, or ladies, driving around and panicking about what you're going to do for Valentine's Day, I have an answer for you. Well, I don't have an answer for you, but Joe and Belliston Jewelry, you do have an answer for the fine folks listening to the Sean O'Connell Show.
That's right, Sean. Hey, I'm glad to be here. Typically we are the engagement superstore. However, This week we are the Valentine's Day superstore.
I like that.
We have ordered, I may have done myself. I'm not sure if I ordered too many, but I ordered 90 dozen roses.
Okay.
They'll be arriving tomorrow. Anyone who comes into my store and spends $129 on Valentine's Day, or more, we could do more too, but $129, and we have a lot of options, $100 options, $200 options, but anyone who spends a minimum of $129 can pick up a dozen roses to take home to their Valentine's Day. So flowers and diamonds.
So, I mean, flowers are already going to get you points. If you show up, here's my idea, fellas, all right? Get the flowers, the fresh flowers. Joe's made sure that the delivery's coming tomorrow so that the flowers stay fresh, okay? You're going to show up with flowers, all right? And you're going to get the, oh, my gosh, so these are wonderful. Thank you so much. Already, you've scored points. That's probably enough. That's probably almost adequate. And then you say, wait, there's more, like you're some infomercial host. And you say, well, the flowers actually just come with this. And you bust out the ring, or you bust out the necklace, or you bust out whatever fine piece of jewelry. And the selection here is massive. When I say there's something for every style, there's something for every taste, there's something for every budget, you really have everybody covered here.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that. I do want to mention also that if you come in today, you will get your flowers. You just have to come back to get them tomorrow.
Yeah, Joe's going to make sure you get your flowers. You'll just they'll be a little bit fresher. You'll have to make 2 trips to Belliston. And the only downside with taking 2 trips to Belliston is that you might be tempted to buy a couple of pieces of jewelry on each visit. That's also not a bad thing, especially if we're looking at those cases in the back. The BOGO, the buy one, get one half off situation you have going on. I mean, I hope my wife's not listening right now. I'm always looking for the good deal. The good deals are back there.
Oh, yeah, there are sweet deals. If you buy anything in the store, whether it's in the BOGO, the first item, or anywhere else, you get to choose as the second item half off in the BOGO showcase. I mean, there's quite a few items. So there's 2 sections. We have items that are $100 regular price, half off of that. So $150 you're rocking out of here with a set of earrings, necklace, and roses.
Don't waste the time. 1155 36th Street in Ogden. $129 or more gets you a dozen roses. $129 or more gets you a dozen roses. And, of course, on top of the dozen roses, you've now picked up a beautiful piece of jewelry. And, look, if you are someone who's thinking about popping the question anytime soon, Maybe you're not going to do it on Valentine's Day because you feel like it's a little too cliche. That's fine. Come in here. I was blown away by the size of the diamonds you have, by the creativity of the designs, and the possibilities are endless. Joe took me through the store, and you've got the showroom here, and then upstairs you've got, like, I don't know, the workshop. What do we call that? You can do literally anything, any concept that someone can imagine jewelry-wise, you could take care of.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. We specialize in custom jewelry as well. I've been a jewelry maker. My dad started me on the bench when I was 16. Now, I don't know exactly how old Sean is, but I guess we're pretty close to the same age.
I'm 41. I'm not shy.
Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
41 years old.
Well, I'm 42.
I've earned my gray beard.
Anyway, I've been doing jewelry for a long time, and I actually have a funny story. When I was a teenager, one of my friends commissioned me to make him a custom CTR ring,
Nice,
modeled after the wrestler Goldberg's tattoo. So there is a Goldberg tattoo CTR ring floating out there. And my friend came back just a few months ago. It was great to catch up with him, and he still had it.
That's amazing.
So I took a scan of it. Now we're way more modern. I have a 3D scanner. I took a scan of this old CTR ring, and I have this old scan. And anyway, it was fun to do that. But we design jewelry via CAD. I've been a CAD designer for over 20 years. We actually have 7 CAD designers that I employ here in the store. We have a few stay-at-home moms that are local that do the CAD work, and then 3 of us here in the store that do the work. And we have jewelers that will make whatever you want.
Look, come in and get your jewelry, get your roses for sure, but be like, hey, where's Joe? I want Joe to show me all this stuff, because if you're just curious about how this is done, it's really awesome. Like I said, I spent, 20 minutes or so going through the workshop with him and finding all of the possibilities, what is really what goes into modern jewelry is super fascinating. So a little educational trip is, there for you also.
Yep,
if you come to
I love giving people the tour. If anyone is curious how jewelry is made, we make it all here. I can show you how it works. Oh, we got a volunteer. Great. I'll give her a tour as soon as I jump off.
We all love to show off. Joe's the same as the rest of us. He's got a great situation here. Let him come show it off to you. So Belliston Jewelry will be here all day. Come pick up the great deals. 1155 36th Street in Ogden. All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back. I want to talk about that thing I just mentioned. Jalen Hurts probably put himself in a top 10 QB situation with this Super Bowl victory. I'm going to tell you why the Super Bowl victory is the reason he will now play like a top 10 QB. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Mahomes. Line drive. It's intercepted at the 40. And picked off by DeGene, who comes to the near side, the 30. Got it back at the 20. Breaks a tackle, the 10. The 5 to the pylon. Touchdown! Eagles have got a pick six.
Cooper DeJean, pick 6 for the Eagles, en route to a 40-22 Eagles victory in Super Bowl 59. That sound courtesy of Westwood One. Kevin Harlan on the call. Yesterday, okay, I actually feel bad for Cooper DeJean, all right? He got a pick 6 in the Super Bowl in his rookie year on his birthday. The rest of his football career is downhill from here. You can't ever replicate that. I don't actually feel bad for him. I'm facetious in feeling bad for him, but genuinely, how do you match a day like that? It's your birthday, your first Super Bowl in your first year, and you get a pick 6. It was a very critical juncture in the game. That was a huge play in the game. That was long before this thing was fully decided. That was the second, I think, my memory serves me correctly. That was like the second really huge defensive play of the game for the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe the third. First time a player had a pick 6 in the Super Bowl on their birthday. Thanks for that factoid, James Peterson, and for the highlight as well. Look,
little trivia for you, OC. I don't know if you were paying close enough attention to see this on the Fox graphic. Second player all time with a touchdown on his birthday in an NFL title game. Now, they don't say Super Bowl on the graphic because the other one happened pre-Super Bowl era.
Okay. All right.
Do you remember seeing the year and the player?
I didn't see the graphic, so no.
Okay.
Who was it?
Steve Van Buren in the 1947 NFL championship game.
Of course. That's silly me. I should have known that.
Isn't that wild, though?
Dude, you know what? They did some great throwback graphics telling you about how football used to be. That's a great one. Did you see the graphic on the average offensive line size from
yes.
Super Bowl 1 to Super Bowl 59?
3 inches shorter in Super Bowl 1 and about 100 pounds lighter.
And
yeah.
90 pounds lighter. This was my favorite thing. This is my favorite graphic of the football season, period. Okay? Super Bowl 1, average offensive line, it was like 6'2", 235 pounds from Super Bowl 1. The offensive lineman. And then Super Bowl 59, it was 6'5", 325 pounds as the average. And obviously, Mekhi Becton is 365, and Jordan Mailata is 345. The Eagles, it was the Chiefs that were bringing that average down. The Eagles, their offensive line averages 340. Those guys are massive. So that was a wonderful graphic.
I loved that. I also loved that based on those numbers, I could have been an offensive lineman in a Super Bowl. In the first Super Bowl, I'm about 6'3", and I'm not going to say how much I weigh, but more than that.
In that range,
in
James.
that range.
Just say ish.
Yeah, there you go. 245-ish or whatever it was.
You know what? This is amazing, and I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but when I was a senior in high school, I was getting frustrated by the lack of recruitment and lack of scholarship offers I was getting, right? And I was just it was bothering me because I thought I was a better player than I was probably. But my grandpa played college football. He played at Cal Poly. He was actually a member of the Cal Poly team that John Madden was on back in the day. There's a fun fact for you. But my grandpa, who's I'm his grandson. He's just oh, yeah, let me help you out. He was well, you need to – how about if you're worried you're not getting a scholarship playing linebacker, why don't you just focus on, trying to be a D lineman? Because you played D-line your whole life, which is true because I was X'd when I was a kid. So why don't you try to be a D lineman? I was like, Grandpa, what are you talking about? D linemen are 300 pounds. But my grandpa came from that era of Super Bowl I that we're talking about. That's when my grandpa was a 220-pound D lineman. like an all-conference D lineman at 220
Oh,
pounds.
so you can't just eat a little bit more and get
so
there?
for him,
Jeez.
we were the same size. Like, I was the same size as him, right? So he was just like, why don't you just be a D lineman, you sissy? And I'm like, well, Grandpa. But it's because of that context, right? So when guys from that era that were normal-sized human beings were starting offensive and defensive linemen, and obviously now you have to be a genetic outlier. You have to be a freakish monster if you want to be a starting offensive lineman in the Super Bowl. So I love that comparison. I thought the broadcast, thought they did a really good job on the broadcast yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about the Tom Brady situation here in just a second. But I really think it's important to note this, even about professional athletes. Jalen Hurts does a phenomenal job of compartmentalizing and just being a professional and playing. But there's no way in hell that Jalen Hurts has completely ignored the narrative that was built around him this year, where it was like, yeah, but it's really Saquon Barkley that's doing this. It's really the offensive line that's doing this. We're not sure if we could trust that Jalen Hurts is going to be adequate for the Philadelphia Eagles to win this Super Bowl. And then he wins Super Bowl MVP and proves, I think with that performance, to everybody else, his family probably already believed, he probably already believed, but proves to everyone else, like, no, like, put some respect on his name. This guy is, you don't have to call him the best quarterback in the league. You don't have to call him even a top 5 quarterback in the league. But that performance in a Super Bowl says he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. And that is the reason. It's like the chicken and egg situation, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Jalen Hurts believing in his own ability and proving to everyone else that he has that ability only further feeds the confidence that Jalen Hurts is going to have playing next year. And Jalen Hurts is going to be a better quarterback next year than he was this year because he won a Super Bowl MVP. Confidence matters, man. It's something that is impossible to measure, truly. You can't, like, there's no number. There's no 40-yard dash. You run a 4.5-second 40-yard dash and you have a 9.5 confidence rating. You can't measure it. It's why the sports psychology is so fascinating around all this stuff. But it is as important or more important, especially for people who play that position. And Jalen Hurts now has no reason to doubt himself. There's nobody around the NFL or in the NFL that has any reason to doubt Jalen Hurts. And that confidence, even though I think he already possessed a lot of it, that confidence has been reinforced and supported by the outcome of this Super Bowl. He'll be a better quarterback moving forward because of this game, because he proved to everybody and to himself, and that bias is now in favor of him instead of against him. So victory in a lot of ways for Jalen Hurts. Watch for him to be truly like a top 10 quarterback, definitively a top 10 quarterback in the league next year. And I will trace it back. I don't know if everyone will. I will trace it back to the performance he had in Super Bowl 59.
Well, and one thing with Jalen Hurts, whether you think that whether you believe in him as a top 5 quarterback, as a rival to those other 4 that we say, and I agree, are head and shoulders above almost everybody else in the league, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, right? Whether you believe he fits in that group or not, he's a distance fifth or whatever, the fact he just proved that he's capable of leading a team to win a Super Bowl. He proved that he's at least as good as Eli Manning, who was never a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think we can all agree on that. He's at least as good as a Kenny Stabler way back in the day, who's not a Hall of Famer but won a couple of Super Bowls as a starting quarterback. Like that, and that's really all you need to do, especially if you have a really good defense like the Eagles. I mean, number 1 defense, scoring defense all year, if I'm not mistaken, OC, and they showed it in the biggest game, and an all-time great running back in Saquon Barkley. If he continues to be near the top of the league or at the top of the league as a running back in production, you don't need to be a top 5 quarterback if you're Jalen Hurts. You just have to be really good, which is what he was certainly in that Super Bowl, and not, I wouldn't say all season this year, but at the times when they needed him to be this year.
I'm actually somewhat surprised in this game that Steve Spagnuolo didn't have more respect for what Jalen Hurts was truly capable of, because it was pretty clear that the Kansas City Chiefs' game plan defensively was we cannot let the offensive line and Saquon Barkley have a 200-yard rushing day on us. Like, we cannot let that happen. They ended up giving up 135, and obviously 72 of those were Jalen Hurts, and a lot of that, most of those, were not on designed runs. It was on his improvisation and him scrambling. But that to me, if I'm Jalen Hurts, as I'm watching back this Super Bowl, and I'm doing so with, probably a cigar in my mouth and just, like, loving it, and well, I don't smoke cigars, but so if I'm Jalen Hurts, I have, like, a box of those Post Malone Oreos. Have you tried those things yet? Oh, my gosh. They're so good. And I'm watching the film, and I'm just celebrating the whole time, and I'm saying, like, he didn't think I was capable of doing this. Steve Spagnuolo was taking away Saquon, which, of course, sometimes you have to pick your poison, and the poison that they picked was the running back. Said, don't let that guy beat us, because I think we'll be okay if Jalen Hurts has to beat us. Like, that's – if I'm a quarterback, I'm taking that as sincere disrespect, and Jalen Hurts played his way out of that conversation from now on. Their teams and defenses are going to have to continue to account for Jalen Hurts if they weren't already, which that is crazy to me, because even if the debate was he's not a top 5 quarterback, maybe not a top 10 quarterback, you still had to, like, know that his particular skill set meant you had to have some kind of a containment game plan, knowing that he was going to bust out and run every once in a while. We're talking lots of Super Bowl. There's another narrative that grows and develops anytime a blowout happens in a football game, especially a playoff football game. It happened in the college football playoff this year. It's now happening in the Super Bowl. I'm going to try to put that to rest when we come back on the Sean O'Connell Show, which is brought to you today and every single day by our friends at Les Schwab Tires. The tires, the wheels, the accessories for whatever it is you drive. Stop by Les Schwab. The professionals there will get the job done right the very first time. We're up at Belliston Jewelers in Ogden. Come see us. Grab $129 worth of jewelry. You'll get a free dozen roses. Hot Lunch is next. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. anytime a blowout happens in a playoff scenario, it must be human nature. There's this idea that we bite down onto, I don't know why, that whoever lost in blowout fashion in some way did not deserve to be there in the first place. That happened in the college football playoff this year with some first-round games, with some lopsided victories, lopsided defeats. Well, yeah, see, didn't belong there. Well, okay, wrong. Teams earn their way into that college football playoff scenario. I'm here to listen to any arguments people have against the current format and the automatic seeding of conference champions with the first-round bye, but there were just as many good games as there were bad games, and just because you didn't show up on any given night, you didn't show up on whatever week, or your opponent was just that much better, it doesn't mean you didn't deserve to be in your playoff scenario. And there is a small contingent, albeit very loud, very vocal, of individuals out there that are like, hey, yeah, see, this is exactly what I was talking about. The referees got the Chiefs into the Super Bowl. They did not deserve to be there on their own merit. I'm not supporting that narrative, but it is something that happens every time a blowout happens. And as surprised, I think, as all of us were to see the Chiefs get blown out, even in a year where we knew they weren't as dominant in the regular season as in their past two Super Bowl appearances or past two Super Bowl victories, these last two, I think that, well, I know that nobody had predicted a blowout loss. Nobody had predicted this dominant performance from the Philadelphia Eagles. But don't get all revisionist on it, all right? You could be the conspiracy theorist who thinks that for some reason the NFL wants a team from Kansas City to be like the flag bearer and the torch bearer, and they're not doing it for Philadelphia, who's a much larger metro and television market. They're not doing it for either the New York teams or either the LA teams. They're doing it for Kansas City very specifically, even though that doesn't make sense. They're not going to do it for the Dallas Cowboys, who are supposed to be America's team and are their number one conversation point, whether we like it or not. They're doing it for the Kansas City. If you want to live with that narrative, that's fine. You can have that. But don't go so far as to be like, well, the Chiefs didn't deserve to be there. It's not like a single elimination. You have one game to win, and that puts you in the Super Bowl. All right? They had a good enough regular season that they qualified for the playoffs, and then they had good enough performances in those playoffs to battle their way to a Super Bowl appearance. And, yes, there was a questionable call or two in the Buffalo semifinal, in the game against the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship game. But please, resist the temptation. I'm begging you to go that far into your conspiracy hole that you think that the Chiefs did not deserve to be in the Super Bowl just because they performed poorly in the Super Bowl. We've seen it happen in championship games. James, wasn't it the Utah Jazz, actually, that put up the fewest points in an NBA Finals game in history?
Yeah, you had to bring that up. You had to bring that up.
Well, nobody thinks that the Jazz didn't deserve to be in the finals just because they laid an egg in a finals game,
56 points, or no, 54 points in the 98 finals, yeah. I believe it was game 3. Anyway, there's been a couple of times when teams have gotten close to breaking that record in the last, 10, 15 years, and you better believe it. I've been rooting hard for that record to be broken, at least in margin of loss, margin of defeat. The 42-point loss. There's been some 38-point losses in finals games, but unfortunately, the Jazz have the lowest points scored and the largest margin of defeat.
And even then, this is not the largest margin of defeat in the Super Bowl history, right?
Yeah.
It's also, that was not the largest margin of defeat. Those 38-point losses, but those were blowouts. Right, in the finals. You've seen it happen in the Stanley Cup finals, 4-5-0 losses in the Stanley Cup finals. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be there. If you're a Cinderella that runs all the way through March Madness and gets blown out by Kentucky in the final, it doesn't mean you didn't deserve to be there. It just means you didn't show up.
Or they were just that much better than you.
Just that much better. And by the way, that's probably that's probably the more correct narrative from this Super Bowl is that on that particular day especially, Philadelphia, that was one of the best performances we've ever seen from an entire unit of football players. I mean, from top to bottom, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned before, Saquon Barkley's probably the only one, maybe the only one on that team who performed below expectations, and clearly that didn't affect them. So you would have thought if you hold Saquon Barkley to under 100 yards rushing, what did he end up with, like 50-something yards rushing?
He had 57 yards rushing.
57.
If you told
Chiefs
anyone,
probably win that game, right?
if you told anyone, hey, it's Saturday night or Sunday morning, and you're just like, hey, I had a dream last night. I looked into a crystal ball in this dream, and the dream said Saquon Barkley is going to average 2.3 yards a carry. He's going to end up with less than 60 rushing yards in this game. Then the money gets laid on the Chiefs. And we're just like, oh, sweet. That's guaranteed to win.
Well, didn't Lee Sterling say in our betting segment on Friday that the over-under was at 1, or maybe it was Lindsey Rhodes the day before, said the over-under was set for at 125.
Yeah, Saquon.
And 70 yards lower than that.
Was insane. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Don't fall down that conspiracy theory rabbit hole that the Chiefs were so bad they didn't even deserve to be in the Super Bowl just because the game itself, they got dominated, especially by that Philadelphia defense. You
can engineer the people who create these playoff formats in whatever sport, the owners in pro leagues and the management committee for college and the CFP. These people, you can control everything but the outcomes of the games. Like, we have to get back to a point, if we ever were at a point, OC, as sports fans, where we have to be able to accept that the scores of the games will be the scores of the games, and that is not a flaw in the seeding and the playoff system. We have to be able to do that.
People can't do that because they think that the results of the games are now manipulated by referees calling the game. Did you feel that way yesterday? That Patrick Mahomes was protected when, was it Jalen Carter who double fist punched him in the face on the either the first or second sack of the game?
I'll admit that what I felt like a phantom pass interference call or holding call, whatever they called on that, would have been a big play on A.J. Brown. I was like, oh boy, maybe the Chiefs are going to get a few of those kind of calls today. But then not long after that, Nolan Smith does that to him. You're like, okay, they're not. They are not.
Nobody can manipulate and change the calls enough that you can recover from a scoreless first half where you had 1 first down and 0 plays run inside Philadelphia territory. So I guess the referees just realized it's going to be too lopsided today, and we'll have to call this one straight down the middle. Maybe for all you conspiracy folks out there, maybe that was the realization. All right, we're here at Belliston Jewelry's in Ogden today, 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner, right off Harrison, right around the corner from Weber State University. Great deal running right now, a dozen free roses with a jewelry purchase of $129 or more. And look, if you want to come in and get the Valentine's gift, Joe and the company up here, they're gonna help you out. They're gonna take care of you. They're gonna make sure that you've got what you need and that it's a high quality gift. Whether it's a necklace, a bracelet, a ring, whatever it is. But it's not just a Valentine's situation. It's not just an engagement ring shopping situation. Belliston really can do it all. Fully designed custom jewelry. The anniversaries are coming up, whatever it is. And I was alerted to this during one of our breaks that for a lot of folks, it's remounting the stones from an old ring into a new ring. That's like a thing. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I'm going to share a quick story about my favorite custom design I've ever done. And It's hard to pick a favorite because I've done so many. But a man came in with this idea that initially sounded kind of ugly.
Okay.
And he was an older guy, came in and said, hey, I want you to design a ring for me for my 60th anniversary where in diamonds across the top literally is the numbers 6 and 0, 60.
Okay.
And I'm like, thinking in my head, well, that's not going to be very pretty.
Okay.
And so I'm telling him, well, we could engrave on the inside happiest 60th, or maybe do a ring with 60 diamonds. And then he patiently waited, and then he explained that his wife, through all the years of being married, had recently gone blind. And so he wanted me to design a 60 on the top so she could feel it with her fingers.
Okay, makes
and
sense.
Instantly melded my heart, made the ring. He loved the ring. I love the ring. It's still to this day, it's my favorite custom ring we ever did. But we have that capability to customize, to take any idea you have and make it a reality.
So when you say things like that to me, because I'm a selfish person, I'm not like, what can I custom design for my wife? I'm thinking like, okay, what really cool piece of jewelry am I going to have Joe make for me? Like, I've actually made this case. We both have spent some time in the combat sports world, right? You do a little grappling yourself, right?
Yep.
So everyone knows that in the fight world, you get a belt, this big old fat belt when you win a championship, right?
Sure,
you can't wear that anywhere. You know what
Yeah.
you can wear somewhere, Joe? A championship ring.
That's right.
I have a belt that's in my basement in a box. I can't wear it anywhere. I want a championship ring. So when you say I can do anything, that's immediately where my mind goes. Again, because I'm selfish.
Yeah, I've done things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, be glad to.
So look, if you need
in all fairness, I am a jiu-jitsu practitioner beginner. I've never fought in the rings.
Well,
hats off to you, Sean.
But you know what? It's all one big community. If you've done any of it, you've done a lot of it. So don't ask Joe to wrestle you or grapple you when you come in, but do ask him to hook you up with a custom design ring. They can remount. And, of course, how many? We decided there's 23 display cases just in the center of the store? 23
23 dedicated to engagement rings and wedding bands.
Oh, my goodness. So I promise you, if you come to Belliston Jewelers, you will find something that meets your needs. It is a one-stop shop for everything jewelry-related. You could also check them out at bellistonjewelry.com. Better yet, though, come in 1155 36th Street in Ogden. The fresh roses are going to be here tomorrow. If you make your purchase today, you could still get your roses tomorrow. $129 or more, a free dozen roses for Valentine's Day. Thanks for having us here. Joe, we got Scott Mitchell, the Utah football legend, NFL quarterbacking veteran. He joins us in 5 minutes to talk about the Super Bowl on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. If you haven't caught a running Utes game yet this season, text Utes to 33986 now for a chance to win a pair of tickets. Up next, it'll be a Saturday against Kansas at home. Tickets are also available at utahtickets.com. Text Utes to 33986. Sean O'Connell Show coming at you live from Ogden today. Belliston Jewelers has a special Valentine's deal going on. With the purchase of $129 worth of jewelry, you get a dozen free roses for Valentine's Day. Scott Mitchell, he's a big jewelry guy. I know that. Utah quarterbacking legend, NFL veteran as well, joining us to talk a little Super Bowl. Scott, welcome. How are you?
Oh, Sean, if I was any better. The life is good. This is the hardest day of the year for everyone. It's the Super Bowl, like doldrums and hangover, and this should be a holiday. But I'm actually in a good mood.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. How surprised were you? How shocking was that outcome in the Super Bowl, especially a scoreless first half for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I wasn't shocked by it at all. In fact, I talked about it before the Super Bowl. This Philadelphia Eagles team is really good. I look at that defense, and they even talked about it on the broadcast about up front. That's where every game is won. And in my 8 years of calling games, for a living or for a part-time hobby anyways, you just watch the line of scrimmage and it's going to tell you everything that's going to happen in a game. And it did. And it was just very impressive by the Eagles. It reminded me so much of when I played for the Baltimore Ravens and they had that Ray Lewis defense, and where they just don't ever give you anything. And if you aren't absolutely on point, perfect in every way, they're gonna find the weakness, and they're gonna shut you down. It was hard to get a first down. It was hard to run the football. It was hard to do anything against that defense, and they were just stifling. And they were one of the things that I don't think people appreciate is they were so good at tackling. And, so often you get extra yards, and Kansas City's really good at that, where they get a guy who catches the ball and he makes some yards after catch, and the Eagles just never gave that up at all. And then you have Patrick Mahomes, who doesn't typically start fast in the Super Bowls, and the one thing that he always does, though, is he gives himself a chance to win it at the end, and he just didn't, so uncharacteristic of him, throwing interceptions and throwing pick sixes. I mean, you just have. I don't think you've ever seen that from Patrick Mahomes, or maybe it's once in a blue moon, and certainly not in a big game. But it just speaks to how good that Eagles defense was and how uncomfortable they made Patrick Mahomes feel almost from the get-go.
As a quarterback, how difficult is it? How uncomfortable is it when there's somebody in your face, there's somebody with a hand on you, there's somebody hitting you, especially doing it without creating blitz pressures or manufacturing that pressure? It's your offensive line is getting beat by a four-man rush on most of these downs. As a quarterback, you know what to look for when the pressure's coming from a corner or a safety or a linebacker coming in from a certain spot. But I imagine not having that outlet can make it a little bit more frustrating. So you tell me.
No, it's really hard, and you saw Patrick where he just it was also when they weren't getting to him, that he was maybe looking a little too early to bail. He didn't have his eyes focused down the field. You have a guy when there's not pressure on him and he's moving, and you saw that, but he just was not comfortable at all in the pocket, and he's pretty good at kind of moving around. The first interception, just stepping and sliding just a little bit in the pocket, and he delivers a better ball, and you could see the accuracy was not there. He's throwing balls kind of in the dirt and high, and they just weren't the typical really easy to catch passes that he throws, and he's very good at that. He's very good at getting the ball to people and letting them run, and you just could see he was not comfortable. And it's a long day when they're not getting to you and they're still getting to you. If you understand what I'm saying, it's like you feel the phantom, the rush, and it's just It's a long day, and you could see early that it was going to be a long day. Even the game is long. It was even going to be longer for Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
On the flip side, Jalen Hurts, it seemed like, aside from the arm punt interception, he was pretty dialed in for the whole day. And maybe that's easier when your defense is playing like that, but still, he's going up against a Steve Spagnuolo defense that has made life miserable for all these other quarterbacks, and he's living behind a pretty dang good offensive line in that game. But especially the way that he recognized the opportunities to pick up first downs with his legs, to extend drives, and things like that. What did you make of Jalen Hurts' performance in the Super Bowl?
I don't think people say it enough, and I've said it before. One of the most impressive things I've seen in football is the transformation of Jalen Hurts. He was a guy at Alabama that lost his job because he couldn't throw the football, and he lost it to Tua. And after winning a national championship, and he couldn't throw, he wasn't accurate. He was drafted, if you remember, by Doug Peterson as the next iteration of the Swiss Army knife, Taysom Hill. They go, well, yeah, look at the production New Orleans is getting from a Taysom Hill. We'll draft Jalen Hurts to be kind of that guy, because if Carson Wentz was the guy that was on his way to being an MVP, and then they win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, they certainly weren't looking for Jalen Hurts to be that guy. And for him to make the transformation, and it was him throwing the football that really did it. And a lot of people were very still skeptical of him throwing the football, but I wasn't. I mean, I saw accurate throws. I saw a guy that I think he's just tough as nails. You know, he's handled being benched at Alabama with such grace and class, and he doesn't bail. You know, he stays at Alabama, and then after he graduates, he goes to Oklahoma and plays incredibly well at Oklahoma, and then is drafted to kind of be that all-purpose kind of dual threat third down specialist quarterback like Taysom Hill. And turns out, wait a minute, this guy is something else. But it's not that they didn't just play to their defense. You know, there's a lot of coaches that go, don't screw it up on offense when we have this great defense. Philadelphia was still very aggressive, and Jalen Hurts has learned how to use running as a weapon and not as the first, you know, thing I do when I'm in the pocket. He's looking to throw the ball, and then he runs when it's advantageous. And man, I love what has happened with him, and it's highly unusual that it does happen. Most of these guys, you know, you think of Tim Tebow, you think of a lot of these guys. I mean, Taysom Hill never turned into an NFL quarterback. Try as he may, and he did try. He just never made it. And so, for Jalen Hurts to do it is like I take my hat off to him. It's really remarkable.
Scott Mitchell, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Super Bowl. Great performance from Jalen Hurts. A lot of folks had penciled in that it would be a Saquon Barkley type game, extending the dominant performances he's had all season behind that stellar offensive line. It seemed clear to me that Spags and the Chiefs were like, we can't let Saquon beat us, and we're going to try to take him away. And they did for the most part. He finishes the game with 57 yards, 2.3 yards per carry. You played with some pretty darn good running backs in your career. When a defense gears itself and successfully takes that guy away, what's the pressure like on the quarterback to then step up and make some things happen?
Yeah, it's funny how you win Super Bowls with a running back, a running game, and a defense, you know, and a dominant defense and a dominant running game. And it speaks to, you know, they're not a one-trick pony. They're not, you know, it's not like they've lived and died with Saquon in the running game, and they've been very productive doing both. And it's a nightmare because as a defense, you talk to a Bill Belichick or some of these guys, and they say, we're going to take away the thing that you do best, and we're going to make you beat us with something secondary. And Philadelphia, it almost felt like they were ready for it, and they were very aggressive. I mean, Jalen Hurts was going after him. You know, they had man coverage, and he was taking shots, and he was very accurate, and so they just had this very, very aggressive mindset, and it's one of, we're just going to take what the defense gives us mentality, and that's a credit to Kellen Moore, who's the offensive coordinator, and his willingness, because he's more of a throw guy to begin with anyways, but they really, really did a nice job of just patiently taking what Kansas City gave them, and what happens is you get mismatches. You get guys because that's not maybe necessarily something that Kansas City's best at. So they go, we're going to put guys at the line of scrimmage. We're going to make sure they don't run the football on us. But Philadelphia's got some weapons. They got some wide receivers that are pretty darn good, and Jalen Hurts played great. And it was a recipe for a blowout, which is what it was, and it was executed to perfection.
Does a blowout loss, when they had a chance to go 3 in a row, does it change the conversation around Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes in any kind of significant way?
I don't. Right now, it kind of clouds things. I don't think people really realize how hard it is to be on top of on top of on top. To go. I mean, the first 7 years of Patrick Mahomes' career has been incredible. And to maintain that edge and that fire, that grit that you have to have is just a really hard thing. And to run into, like, Philadelphia's a better team. They are a better football team than the Kansas City Chiefs, and they won the football game. They dominated the football game. And a lot of times it's a little bit easier. It's never easy to swallow a loss, especially in a Super Bowl, but it makes it a little bit easier when they just kicked their butt. I mean, they really did. As far as changing the perception of Kansas City, I think what it does is it really starts to turn the juices for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to go, we don't like the taste of this. We're embarrassed by this. We played poorly. We want a chance to answer back, and that may keep Andy Reid coaching longer. It may keep Travis Kelce in the game longer. It may be that kind of ignition to really remind Patrick Mahomes, like, winning is hard in the NFL. It's brutally hard, and even as good as you are, someone is always around the corner waiting to knock you off your throne. And if you want to just take a minute to breathe and take in the air, you're going to get pummeled. So, time and history will be kind to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but that'll be down the road. They're Hall of Fame caliber people. They're going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's remarkable what they've done. So, to me, I think the fascinating thing is, what does this make them do now? Where do they take this now?
Yeah, from a personnel standpoint, you've got an aging Travis Kelce. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is the guy you build around. You've got an aging Travis Kelce who expressed this week that he has no interest in retiring anytime soon. Xavier Worthy ended up having a phenomenal Super Bowl game. 8 catches, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, whose best NFL years are probably behind him, even though he's still a good player. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think you could probably say the same thing. I mean, your offensive line, every offensive line except the Eagles in the NFL probably needs a little bit of retooling. Maybe the Lions could say the same thing. But if you're looking at the result from this Super Bowl and you're seeing what Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles were able to put together and how dominant that roster is, what is the move for the Kansas City Chiefs? Do you need more or better talent to surround Patrick Mahomes with? Or do you just, you don't overreact and you kind of stay the course and say, look, it was a bad Super Bowl, but we were there again and we just got to tweak some minor things?
Yeah, I think everyone will kind of look at themselves. I mean, one of the things that Kansas City has been living on the last couple of years is they have been playing really good defense, and they are a really good defense. They were put in some tough situations in that game, a lot of 3-and-outs, and the offense, turning the ball over, and so now you're down, and it's just hard to win a game like that. And they'll go examine this game, and now everyone in the world is going to examine the Philadelphia Eagles and how do we beat them, and how do we counter this? How do we? And I guarantee you that Chiefs will look at this game, and Patrick Mahomes will look at it and goes, "Oh, geez, like we were terrible." And so I don't know if it's so much about personnel. I mean, the Eagles got a couple of guys on defense, and it took them from like almost the bottom of the NFL on defense to the very top. So adding a guy here and there can make a huge difference. Maybe it is an offensive lineman, maybe it's one just like elite, skill guy on offense. I think Patrick Mahomes has structured his contract to be friendly for this kind of thing. So they tip. I haven't really looked at the numbers in depth, but they don't seem to be in cap prison. They can be competitive. And again, I'm just going to go back to where does this take Patrick Mahomes? Because you look at Tom Brady, and it's really Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes as far as these quarterbacks go. And everyone was like, "Oh, Brady's done. The Patriots are done." And I think this was on like their fourth Super Bowl, and you kind of feel like, the Kansas City Chiefs are done. Patrick Mahomes had his run. Andy Reid's going to retire. All this stuff, and these coaches and these players are never done. Like no one ever wants to retire and quit. And you just have these kind of ebbs and flows in your career. And you look at Tom Brady, and Tom Brady just kind of went ballistic, the end of his, his whole diet changed, his workout he just got really, really dialed in. And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes isn't dialed in, but I'm saying, does it make him get more hungry, and what does that player look like? Because that could be really exciting to kind of see the second half of Patrick Mahomes' career and what kind of player he becomes. And maybe this is that wake-up call, that catalyst moment that just galvanizes him and that whole organization, because they know how to win. They know how to get there. They know how to, so that battle's over with. Now it's like, how do we get back there? How do we find that, that fire? This is like, if you ever watched the Rocky movies, this is like Rocky, 3, where he gets on top and he kind of has some success and he's afraid now, and he's got to find the eye of the tiger kind of thing. And that's kind of where Kansas City is for me.
How much did Tom Brady love being on the game, calling that game, and watching the collapse of the Chiefs to at least for now keep that GOAT conversation, the greatest of all time at the quarterback position conversation at bay? Because, it would have ramped up a little bit more if Patrick Mahomes became the first quarterback to go 3 in a row. And Tom Brady happens to be calling the game when he doesn't play particularly well as the Chiefs lose it. He seems like the kind of guy that would relish it, as professional as he tries to be.
I thought the same thing. And I thought it because I think those things myself, right?
Scott, there's not a guy with your level of achievement that is not hyper-competitive. So even though everyone tries to be a good sport, nobody wants to see their records broken, and nobody wants to see the young guy start to take away the attention and be called the greatest of all times. And he's calling the game, trying to hide the joy in his voice, I swear.
Yeah. I totally thought that. And you're not hyper competitive for no reason, right? I can tell you every Monday, when I was with the Miami Dolphins, we would get the NFL official stats for the week. And it was Monday afternoon, and the quarterbacks had a meeting with Coach Shula. And everyone had gone home, and we started watching game film for the next week. And Marino would examine the statistics, because Warren Moon was running the run and shoot, and Warren Moon was on pace to beat Marino's single-season passage record, touchdowns. And he's like, that guy cannot beat me. He can't, and so I know it, and I feel the same way. Believe me, I was not happy that Cam Rising was going to beat all my records and whatever, and I'll be gracious about it. Who cares? But there's a side of me that was like, hey, my records are still safe for a few years.
Yeah, I remember we talked about
totally honest here and candid. Yeah. Tom Brady was happy for Patrick Mahomes' demise.
Scott, love catching up with you, man. Thanks for joining us on the show today. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you got it.
Scott Mitchell, Utah quarterback legend, hyper competitive as you can tell when he's talking about that, and of course, longtime veteran of the quarterback position in the NFL. To his point, by the way, he's right. Patrick Mahomes, if the Chiefs are going to be making some personnel decisions and potentially trying to add talent, Patrick Mahomes at present is he's tied for 11th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson, and Kirk Cousins. Kirk is the one he's tied with for the average salary of $45 million a year. All those guys, from a year-to-year basis, are higher paid, and when you don't get too deep into the technicalities, have a larger cap hit for their team than Patrick Mahomes, the Patrick Mahomes. So the Chiefs will hopefully have some flexibility if you're a Chiefs fan, at least. We're here at Belliston Jewelers today. Patrick Mahomes could do some damage in here if he came in with that $45 million a year and wanted to buy an engagement ring. But you don't have to have that kind of dough. They've got something for every budget. In fact, if you're trying to get something done before Valentine's Day, a purchase of $129 or more gets you a free dozen roses with the purchase of your jewelry. $129 or more. 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner from Weber State, right off Harrison, BellistonJewelry.com as well. Joe has been very gracious in having us here today. We've talked about the engagement ring. We've talked about the engagement ring headquarters. We've talked about Valentine's Day headquarters. You showed me earlier the men's rings. You got a great selection and a great kind of methodology for fitting a men's ring. And I didn't know that I needed a more comfortable ring until you showed me, and now I know I need a more comfortable ring.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I set off, like a lot of guys, I'm very particular about comfort, especially when it comes to jewelry. I actually don't love wearing a lot of rings, don't love wearing a lot of jewelry. And as a jewelry designer and maker for over 20 years.
As a man who's in the business, you're like, I don't really love wearing jewelry.
So it's got to be comfortable.
Okay.
But if I'm going to wear it, it's got to be comfortable. And that's one of the things I pride myself on as a designer. I set out to design the most comfortable men's band ever. Not too thick, not too thin. It's got a slight dome, a slight curve to it on the outside and the inside. And there's a few different widths and about a dozen different styles you can choose from. But you have to come in and try it on in person to really feel. Because I made a whole finger set, or a size of finger, or a set of finger sizes. There we go. So you can come in and try it on and feel the right size. And it's not until you have that magic moment where you put it on. And I mean, I have people tell me all the time, like, it's like I'm not even wearing a ring.
Well, I didn't realize, because like I wear my ring, I'm just like, whatever. That's how it feels on my finger. I don't notice it most of the time. I was like, my ring is fine. And then you're like, well, try these on. I'm like, oh, great. Now I notice my ring on my finger. It feels like this big fat chunk of weight because I can feel it on my pinky. I can feel it on my middle finger. These ones, you put it on the ring finger itself, and then it's like golden.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have the ability to size to a quarter size or a three-quarter size, just to dial it in so it's just right for you.
Before I let you get out of here, we were talking about it during the last break. Everybody needs, like, a plumber they trust. You need an automotive mechanic that you trust, someone that's going to take care of your stuff, not overcharge you, not just make up things that have to. I didn't know before showing up here today how difficult it is in the jewelry space now for people to have and find a jeweler that they trust, because there's so many of these, like, chain stores are dominating the jewelry space right now. You want to be the jeweler that people trust.
Well, we are the jeweler that people trust here in Ogden, and we'd love to spread that word. We've been around for over 50 years. My dad actually started the business. He's now retired, but he left me with a lot of good lessons, and I've worked with him for over 25 years. We have a lower markup than a typical jewelry store. And so you can come in and just know that you're not going to get ripped off. You're going to pay a fair price for a great product. And we stand behind our products really well, too.
And then if you need a resizing, you need a repair, you need just a simple cleaning, you can bring it back to the same spot that's been here for over 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll actually resize any ring that we've sold for free for the first year. After that, we have a lower markup. So there's a thing called a blue book for jewelry repair pricing. And we are 20% less than blue book for jewelry repair pricing. And I mean, that's just standard.
So for you, the consumer, it's beneficial in many different ways. You actually get to know your jeweler. You obviously have the local connection. It's a lot more gratifying to support a local business. And then, of course, they stand behind everything so you can keep coming back. Give them a shot at Belliston Jewelry if you're not already doing so. BellistonJewelry.com, 1155 36th Street up here in Ogden. We're here for another hour and a half or so, and $129 or more purchase will get you 12 roses before Valentine's Day. Take them home to the significant other. Score points on multiple fronts with the jewelry and with the roses. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Scott Mitchell, for joining us in that last segment. Plenty left to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. We're just getting started for the week. It's Monday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
In the pistol, on the NFL logo, from the Kansas City 46, Eagles take over 1st and 10. The shotgun snap, the fake handoff. And Hurts drops back 5, winds up, long arching pass, down the middle. It's caught over the shoulder in the end zone. Touchdown, Smith. And that may make it insurmountable. 46-yard touchdown strike. 33-0 Eagles. Wow.
46-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Smith. 40-22 the final score. Westwood One gave us the sound. Kevin Harlan on the call. Did a great job as always. James, what did you make of the Tom Brady-Kevin Burkhardt pairing on the Super Bowl? Did you like Tom Brady, especially his Super Bowl performance?
I don't think I hated it as much as some people did. I'm looking at some of the reaction. People thought people were talking like he was the worst color analyst in any game in NFL history. I'm not quite feeling that way, but he didn't necessarily bring anything to the broadcast that made me go, yeah, I really liked it either. You know, I guess I'm kind of lukewarm on his performance.
The thing with Tom Brady that I think outside of football, Tom Brady is very dry. Like, Fox should have known that. I think we as people who've watched his entire career, like, he's dry. When he does interviews, he doesn't say anything. He's very, like, down the middle on all of it, and that's how he is as an announcer. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great. I don't know why he makes $37.5 million a year for the next 10 years to do the job when there are other guys who are better at it. But I'm not a full-blown hater on his style. It's just very vanilla. And on this Super Bowl, I think people didn't love that vanilla. So is what it is. But some people thought that Tom Brady's analysis was a downside of the Super Bowl. A lot of people thought that the non-competitive game was a downside to the Super Bowl. I still enjoyed it. I was still very interested and fascinated by it because of how it played out and the fact that it was so far outside of the realm of expectation for what any of us thought was going to happen in this game. The real downside, the only real downside I felt we experienced is especially folks here with a local interest, James, and it's a huge bummer, but, you know, Britton Covey made it public, I think it was the night before the game, I think it was Saturday night, that he was not going to be able to suit up for the game, that he was, like, officially out and wasn't going to, there was nothing was going to change. And obviously that's something that, you know, that was a reminder, like, oh yeah, like the local interest in the Super Bowl. So many people here love Britton Covey. Even BYU folks have some affection for him because of the family connection down there, probably. But Britton Covey, in a great year, in what could have been the biggest game of his life, unfortunately had to remain on the sideline. A frustrating season for the return specialist from Utah, who obviously, when the season began, he was getting a little bit more activity, a little bit more love as a wide receiver. He actually had more targets and receptions this year in 5 games than he did all of his rookie season, playing in 16 games. So really a huge bummer for Britton Covey that he only ended up playing 5 games in a Super Bowl season. Obviously, he's going to still get the ring as part of the franchise, part of the team. He deserves to get that ring. It probably doesn't feel, well, not probably. I can tell you it doesn't feel the same when you're not a huge part of things to get the championship ring. You're still proud to be part of it. You're still proud to have some involvement in it, but it's not like your championship ring doesn't weigh the same as like Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley's championship ring. And that's I'm bummed out for Britton Covey because he's a great player that if he was able to stay healthy would have been a part of what, you know, made the Eagles a Super Bowl champion, a larger part of what made the Eagles a Super Bowl champion instead of the minor role that he was playing as an injured reserve. It's a bum deal, man.
It is, and I think that all we have to do, if you're not sure that even if he was just a punt returner and not part of the offense like he was at the early point in this regular season, I think all you have to, if you're not convinced that as just a punt returner he could have had a big impact on the game, all you got to do is look at when he almost broke a punt for a touchdown in the loss 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, the first Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl all you got to do is go back and look at that highlight to see what kind of impact Britton Covey could have had even as a punt returner on this game. They didn't need it, clearly, but it would have been cool to see Britton out there and be able to break one or two great punt returns, get him great field position, if not maybe a touchdown. And like I said, he got so close a couple years ago in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs doing that.
So he practiced on Friday, full participant in practice, and then the determination was made that the neck was still too damaged, too bad, and he was not going to be able to play, which that's a metaphor for the game itself, right? You make it to the Super Bowl, and then you can't win the Super Bowl. If you're a Chiefs fan right now, you're like, oh my gosh, he got so close, and then it didn't work out. That's how the Niners and all of us Niners fans felt last year. Thought it was going to be your year, and then it wasn't. And you battle yourself back. You try to get as healthy as you can get to the point where you can practice, and then it becomes apparent like, just not quite there. That's a rough deal. So shout out to Britton Covey, who's obviously, he's part of this franchise, and he will get the Super Bowl ring, and that's awesome. Wish we could have seen him playing in this game and adding something to that, because the Chiefs did have to punt.
Yeah, they punted plenty. That's for sure. And DeJean, maybe there was one that he got a decent return out of, but most of the time he was fair catching. I got to think Covey would probably have tried it a little bit more to break something.
DeJean's got too many good things going for him right now anyway. Super Bowl champion on his birthday, pick 6, and big-time prospect coming out of a place. Like, the town Cooper DeJean's from, right, is like they play like 2A football. He was
really
the best basketball. He was the best basketball player, track star, and football player of his high school. This little like podunk spot in Iowa. It's unbelievable watching. I mean, actually, there's a lot of similarities between him and Britton Covey, aside from the obvious like visual similarities. But a dude that if you watch his high school highlight tape, it's just ridiculous. So he's doing just fine, that Cooper DeJean. He didn't need the punt returns as well. All right, take another quick one here from Belliston Jewelers up in Ogden. $129 purchase gets you a dozen free roses for your Valentine. BellistonJewelry.com or 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner from Weber State University, just off Harrison Boulevard. Stop by, say hello. We've got some candy for you. And more importantly, they've got great deals and a great selection here at Belliston Jewelry. We've been talking football all day. We're going to talk some basketball in our next segment and in our next hour. Tanking update. James Peterson tells you how the weekend affected the Utah Jazz ability to hopefully have a top 3 pick, maybe even a top 2 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Now that football season is over, it's time to bite down hard, everyone, on basketball season. College basketball in full swing, tournament time rapidly approaching, and, of course, the NBA regular season and the upcoming draft lottery. If you're a Utah Jazz fan, that's what you're paying close attention to. It's not going to be a playoff year for the Utah Jazz, obviously. So we get a tank race update anytime the Utah Jazz play the game, or even when their opponents, the other folks that are racing toward the bottom of the standings, are active over the weekend. James, the Super Bowl took center stage, and all the attention, all the wind out of every other sports sales this weekend for the most part. What happened in the NBA?
Well, real quick, I'll give you the lowdown of what's going on tonight in the tank race. What teams are factoring tonight or playing a game tonight. Jazz are at the Lakers, OC, tonight, 8:30. It's on ESPN. It's on ESPN Plus. It's even on Disney Plus, OC. Do you want to know why?
Yeah, why is it on Disney Plus?
I don't know exactly why it's on Disney Plus, but it's on Disney. It's on all of that. It's on ESPN's and all of their networks and all their streaming services, because this is supposed to be Luka's Lakers debut coming against the Jazz. He's still listed as questionable officially, though, OC, with the calf injury. So we shall see. Andy Larson probably has some insight on that. We're going to talk to him about 40 minutes or so from now. We'll ask him if he knows anything about Luka's status, playing status tonight. But that's the big one that everyone in the league is going to be watching, because potentially Luka's playing. And because it's a Jazz game and everyone's really bought into this tank race, OC.
All right.
So there's that one. Cavs are hosting the T-Wolves, so that's probably a loss for the T-Wolves, or a favorable loss for the T-Wolves, which is good for the Jazz because the Jazz own their first-round pick. Wizards hosting the Spurs. Nets hosting the Hornets. Normally, lately we've been saying that's a win-win, but the Nets have kind of started to figure things out. And so they're kind of playing themselves out of the tank race. So
well done.
You'd rather
good
have
job.
Charlotte win. Yeah. So good job, Brooklyn. We're happy about that around here. So we'd rather have Charlotte win that game if you're a Jazz fan. And then Pelicans are visiting the Thunder. Not much hope for some separation for the Jazz with the Pelicans, who are a half game ahead of them in the tank race right now. I'll update the standings, the tank race standings in a second here, but going through what happened over the weekend, OC, the Jazz lost to the Clippers on the road on Saturday. Wizards fell to the Hawks on Saturday night. The T-Wolves beat the Blazers. That also happened on Saturday night. And the Pelicans got so close to an upset win over the Kings. Lost 123-118. So missed opportunity for the Jazz to separate themselves there. Yesterday, because I would normally say last night, OC, but the NBA knows well enough to not schedule games during the Super Bowl. So it was yesterday. Had a few games, including the Hornets and Pistons. Pistons beating the Hornets, and the Rockets beating the Raptors in a close one. And then this one doesn't factor in the tank race, but did you watch any of the Bucks Sixers, OC, to see the send-off for Hubie Brown? I thought it was pretty cool.
I saw a stat about the send-off for Hubie Brown that I think they brought it up on a graphic. He has either coached or coached against 80% of all players currently in the NBA.
Yeah, well, so it's coached them or against them or broadcasted games for 80%. Okay. Yeah, but 80%. Still, insane.
every human being with an NBA connection, or 4 out of 5 human beings with an NBA connection, have at least had some contact with Hubie Brown. That's wild.
It was really cool, and they had some cool interviews with guys who were play-by-play broadcasters and partners of Hubie Brown over the years. A lot of them ESPN, because it was an ESPN telecast. They had a lot of the ESPN partners, but they also invited Mike Tirico, who's now with NBC, as we all know, because he spent such a long time with ESPN and called a ton of games with Hubie Brown. Those were cool. One of the coolest things, though, the refs after the game all gathered around the broadcast area there and handed him the game ball. And Hubie and Mike Breen joked about how weird is this that Hubie Brown's getting some love from the refs when after all the battles he used to have with the refs as a head coach. So
refs have such an odd place in every sport because, like, you don't want them to be involved, and then they are involved, and you're just like, oh, yeah, but they're just like dudes who want to be around the sport, and these coaches are screaming at them half the time, but then you find out later on that the coaches and the ref actually like get along pretty well,
yeah.
and know each other, and there's a mutual respect between them. It's just such an odd deal. But, all right, so
yeah.
the bottom line is the Jazz are currently where in the tank race standings?
Yeah, so real quick, before the tank race standings, one big news item came down yesterday, pre-Super Bowl, that affects the tank race. You remember we were talking about how everyone in that bottom 5 in the NBA got worse except for the Jazz. The Jazz got a little bit worse, but maybe not worse enough from a roster standpoint at the trade deadline. We were talking about that last week, OC. One of those trades was the Lakers trading for Mark Williams, the Hornets center.
Oh, I saw this.
Yes. That trade has been voided.
Yeah.
Which is big news for the tank race. It keeps the Hornets have to keep their starting center because the Lakers did not pass his physical. So that makes the Jazz not being able to trade guys like John Collins and Jordan Clarkson feel a little bit better because the Hornets are not quite as worse as they looked like they would be if they had been able to complete this trade, sending Mark Williams to the Lakers. Also unfortunate for the Lakers because their best center now is Jackson Hayes. And all due respect, that's not going to get it done if they're looking to win a championship this year.
So that's beneficial for everyone because the Hornets will win more games and the Lakers will win fewer games.
Yes.
And nobody here likes the Lakers.
There you go. So quick tank race standings update. Wizards are still 1. Surprise, surprise. They're the only team in the league with single-digit wins, 9-43. Pelicans are 2 at 12-40, 3 games back. Jazz are 3 at 12-39, 3.5 games back. Hornets 13-37, 4 games back. And then 5th, Raptors 16-37, 6.5 games back. I took out the Nets. They're too good right now, OC. They're 9 games back of the worst record in the league. I took them out. So we're back to 5.
They played their way out of contention for the number 1 pick.
At least for now. They could go on a huge losing streak and get closer, but they're out of it for now.
Love it.
There's
Thank
your
you
tank
for the
race
tank
update.
Race update. Well done by James Peterson. We're here at Belliston Jewelers in Ogden. Come see us, 1155 36th Street, right around the corner from Weber State University off Harrison. BellistonJewelry.com as well. Valentine's Day special going on. $129 purchase gets you a dozen roses. The flowers are going to stay fresh. They're going to be delivered here tomorrow. Even if you make your purchase today, you can obviously get that dozen free roses. Joe's been a gracious host so far today. What do you have there? What's it? This ring in front of me. What is this?
Show you. In fact, I'll hand it to you right now.
Okay.
So there's a fun story with this ring.
Okay.
So a few years ago, I made a ring just like that for my wife for Christmas.
All right.
But naturally, your wife's ring always gets worked on last.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the joke, but there's a lot of truth to it. You got to make sure everyone else's jewelry is all finished up before you can do that. But this ring, if you look closely underneath, it's really kind of hard to tell because the diamonds are so small. But one unique feature of this ring is everywhere where you have a little diamond, there's a hole, typically in a ring.
But it's not just a regular hole.
Right. These are heart-shaped cutouts.
Yes.
Heart-shaped holes under these little diamonds.
And those serve a function of allowing light to pass through the stone and make it sparkle more?
It's typically easier to clean.
Okay.
It's kind of the main thing. Light, that's debatable. It depends on where it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway, so the fun story with this is I happened to miss my wife's Christmas party. The extended family Christmas party on her side of the family.
Okay.
Because I was stuck here at work working on her ring. Now, she didn't know I was working on her ring. She thought I was working on a customer's ring, some other customer's ring.
So you were in big trouble.
Yeah, I was already in trouble. And at the time, we had 3 little kids, and she was wrestling them, and one of them ended up, I think, throwing up or something at the party. So she left the party. On her way home, she calls me, and she's kind of upset, and she's like, "Wow, where are you?" You know, and I'm telling her, "Well, this ring has 95 diamonds in it." And I told her that, like, I'm setting a ring, and it's got a lot of diamonds. It's got 95 diamonds. Now, they're all little, but they're 5 rows. It's a beautiful kind of fashion-style ring, real comfortable, low profile.
It's awesome.
And as I told her that, her reaction is who would want a ring with 95 diamonds? That's ridiculous.
And you're like, I hope you do.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of sweating a little bit. But anyway, I gave her the ring on Christmas, and she immediately figured it out. And she just kind of laughed. And, well, I guess I would like a ring with 95 diamonds. And she loves it to this day. But it's kind of a fun story and a fun thing that we can do. We can do things like put heart-shaped cutouts on a diamond. Super unique. No one's going to know it but you or anyone you show. You have to tell them. But yeah, that's the sort of thing we can do. We're a full-service jewelry store, locally owned, fair prices, lower markup than a typical retail store.
And when Joe says full service, I mean, it is truly full service. I challenge you, if you're someone who's like, man, I've been looking for a particular ring, an engagement ring, a gift or whatever, and I just can't find that exact right thing, bring in the photos for reference, bring in your great-grandma's ring that your mom won't give you yet or whatever, and they can copy it. They can do anything. It is fully custom. He was showing me the CAD design and the 3D printers, and this is truly a one-stop shop. I'm incredibly impressed. Everyone's got to get up here and check out what Belliston Jewelry is truly capable of.
In-house jewelry manufacturing.
It's awesome. It really – and Joe will show it off for you, because if you're fascinated by that, yes, you want to get the great gift, but if you also want to learn a little something about the process, this is the right place to do it. BellistonJewelry.com, 1155 36th Street up here in Ogden, and the Valentine's special is going on right now. Purchase of $129 or more, you'll get a dozen free roses with that purchase. Bail yourself out. Get yourself out of trouble. If you're the one who left the wife and the kids and didn't make it to the Christmas party or the Super Bowl party yesterday and you got yourself in the doghouse for it, they got a bunch of great rings that'll get you right out of that doghouse.
Get right out of the doghouse.
That's awesome. I love that story. Thank you, Joe. All right, Andy Larson's going to join us in half hour to talk a little Utah Jazz. I have some more thoughts on the Super Bowl, and we haven't even discussed with James Peterson. He's a huge, huge Super Bowl halftime show connoisseur, so I got to get his thoughts on yesterday's show, which was very, very different than a lot of the ones that we've seen. It's Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Appreciate you. Sean O'Connell Show coming at you from Belliston Jewelry in Ogden. We just had one of our great listeners stop by, say hello, grab some of the Valentine's candy we've got going on right here. Not just candy, free roses, a dozen of them, with a jewelry purchase of $129 or more. Incredible selection for your significant other here, for men, for ladies. They've got necklaces. They've got the buy one, get one half off display cases back here. And, of course, if you're looking for something fully custom, they can do that for you too. Belliston, really an awesome place. All right, so we've talked about a lot of the different angles of this Super Bowl. Here's Tom Brady. That smile in his voice on the broadcast was expected, but also valid, because what happened, we watched this situation where Patrick Mahomes didn't play all that well, and the Eagles dominated this game. It puts a little bit of a pause on what the eventual discussion looks like. It creates the analogy even more so. It cements the analogy of Michael Jordan and LeBron James versus Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, right? That conversation. What is the thing that people always use against LeBron James, despite his longevity, despite how many times he made it to the finals and carried teams on his back directly to the finals? The Michael Jordan camp, the detractors of the LeBron James camp say, well, yeah, he made it a bunch of times, but how many times did he lose? And Patrick Mahomes is now a guy who had this. He had this bad game. He had the loss that you can't blame it all on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that offensive line was just letting him get hit. He was getting harassed. The Eagles' defense stepped up. And in the first half, where they held the Chiefs scoreless, they really decided the game. The offense picked up later in that second quarter, but the defense is really and obviously Jalen Hurts played incredibly well, as we've been talking about on the show today. But this puts a pause, a temporary or maybe permanent pause, on the debate in football about who the greatest quarterback of all time is. If Patrick Mahomes had been able to pull off 3 in a row, then that thing would have ramped up. And Stephen A. Smith would have been shouting on television about it today. I probably would have been talking about it a lot more, because 3 in a row had never been done and still has not been done because of those Philadelphia Eagles and Vic Fangio knowing what he had in that defense and knowing the vulnerabilities of that Kansas City Chiefs offensive line that has figured it out up until that point. We'll talk about that more on the show tomorrow when Jeff Schwartz joins us. But, man, just a really dominant performance by the Philadelphia defense that ultimately affects the conversation around a quarterback, even one as talented and as accomplished as Patrick Mahomes. I guess as you look back and you kind of, in retrospect, take in a football season like this one, and you start turning the page to next year, part of the big picture narrative now is like what goes on with the teams that have been dominant in the last 3, 4, 5-year cycle of the NFL. The Commanders have clearly arrived in a way that they had not previously been back. And their owner right now is flexing, and their GM is rolling around and talking about how they're going to go back more towards the Redskins branding, even with the Commanders name. I don't know what that's going to look like. But everyone's feeling really good in Washington, and that's just one example, right? The Dallas Cowboys are trying to get back. The San Francisco 49ers are trying to, prop something up to keep the Super Bowl window open, and they've got to make a decision on Brock Purdy. We talked about it a little bit with Scott Mitchell. What do you do if you're the Kansas City Chiefs? Because you were decimated at different junctures this season by injuries to your skill players, and then things caught up with your offensive line a little bit later on in the year. You have the talent to build around, the guy to build around in Patrick Mahomes, but how do you do it? With a contract that's friendly for building, and do you need to make a bunch of different adjustments? Travis Kelce says he wants to play indefinitely, but do you continue to rely on an aging Travis Kelce who's has a harder time staying healthy, and now is he's an odd dresser. He shows up at all these games dressed like he's in a 1970s drug cartel movie. I don't know if you saw the outfit, James Peterson, but the whole, you've got, I don't think the distraction stuff is really a worthy discussion to have, but he's old. You know, he's getting old. So do you have to start adding talent to bolster your passing attack? Do you have to do what the Philadelphia Eagles did and try to take a big swing on one of the top running backs if anyone is still is going to be available in a trade market or in free agency? Like, what do you do if you're the Chiefs to try to continue this dynasty? The dynasty is not over just because you got blown out in one Super Bowl. You can be back there. You can be back there and win it next year. And then we'll be having all these conversations that are happening today will be completely forgotten. But what do you do? There are any assortment of teams, and it's probably 10 or 12 teams in the NFL who think they have a realistic shot at winning the Super Bowl next year. And a couple of those are new characters, and a couple of those are the old, regular usual suspects that are trying to keep that window open. And the Chiefs have no reason to believe that they're going to drop off, but we've seen it so many times in sports. You can't guarantee that you're going to be back there anytime soon, even if you have someone with an incredible amount of talent. I mean, how many times did the Atlanta Falcons in like the early 2000s think that they were well prepared from like 2005 to 2020? How many times did that team be like, look at themselves and say, hey, we got the squad this year?
Yeah.
We can do it this year. And you just can't ever guarantee. The Lions this year, the Detroit Lions this year looked like the best team in football. And then they run up against this upstart Commanders team with the rookie of the year, and all of a sudden everyone's just like, wait, what happened to the Lions? So that's the question, one of the many questions, and one of the many things my thoughts turn to today as we close the page, close the book on the 2024 football season. Like, all right, do the Chiefs stay in this conversation for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years? I mean, Andy Reid's not as young as he used to be. I don't think he's lost the fastball just because of one bad game in the Super Bowl by his team. But the narratives never stop with NFL football. With football, period. There's no such thing as an offseason anymore, James.
It's true, but speaking of offseason, when we talk about player movement, you mentioned what do the Chiefs, what should they look to do? It's actually a pretty good free agent running back class coming up. Aaron Jones, with most of his career with the Packers, this last season with the Vikings, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. He just turned 30, so maybe you want someone younger, but he's a productive player that's in the free agent market from the running back position. Najee Harris, who's a good young Steelers running back, is an unrestricted free agent. A.J. Dillon with the Packers, he's had a decent start to his career. He's about to turn 27. He's a free agent. Nick Chubb from Cleveland, who's been awesome when he's healthy. Yeah, he's 29, going to turn 30 here soon, but he's also a free agent. So if I'm the Chiefs, I'm looking at getting more of a running game, and hopefully Pacheco's healthier next year, because when he's right, he's really awesome for them. But they might look at adding one of these guys to help bolster their run game. I've heard lots of people say, "Oh, their receivers are awful," whatever. I'm like, I think they're actually pretty good from a receiving standpoint. They could get a little younger, but Rashee Rice is going to come back. You got to presume some health from him next year. Hope for some health for him next year. Xavier Worthy was awesome in that second half in the Super Bowl. Really the only offense they had all game, and he had a really good rookie season at times this year. I'd expect him to be better. He's really young, and then see what they can get from some of the veterans that might remain if they're able to retain Hopkins, for example. What they can get from an aging Travis Kelce going forward. I think the receiving game's pretty good. I would look at maybe bolstering the running game, and you've got some pretty good options as free agents.
I did not realize Najee Harris was going to be available. I would be all over that if I were the Kansas City Chiefs.
And to be fair, the Steelers are probably highly motivated to bring him back. So it's not like he's unrestricted, but it's not like it's a guarantee he's leaving. But that's the name that jumped out to me too.
So there's that question, and then of course there's the Philadelphia Eagles, who are right now they're riding high. Their parade is scheduled for Valentine's Day. the city of brotherly love is going to just be in love with that team. And
on Valentine's Day, the city of brotherly love is celebrating a championship. Man, that's pretty good symmetry there.
It's going to get absolutely wild. Did you see, by the way, that the light posts were greased in New Orleans for the first time?
I missed that. That's
they put
wild.
They put the Crisco or whatever on the light poles, so because they knew that Philadelphia Eagles fans are complete lunatics.
They like to climb the light posts.
They didn't want people hurting themselves on Bourbon Street or destroying Bourbon Street. So
good for them.
Well done, New Orleans.
Yeah, I missed that, but I did see, or someone was telling me about a video of a light post in Philadelphia being passed around by fans on the street. The way that the field goal posts are uprooted from the field and then paraded around town, like we saw with the Vanderbilt upset. After the Vanderbilt upset went over Alabama, apparently they did that with a light post in downtown Philadelphia or somewhere in Philadelphia.
All right.
Yeah.
So, look, the big story, one of the many big stories that come out of this game for me.
You mean bigger than the light post story? We were just talking. Okay.
Story is that you have a coach now who was embattled as recently as like 4 weeks ago, who has won a Super Bowl championship. This is a direct reflection of what happened in college football as well with Ryan Day. People were coming after him. They wanted his head on a pike after Ohio State lost to Michigan. And then he ends up, because of the format change in college football, the expanded college football playoff format allows him an opportunity still to chase a championship. And then almost like it was a foregone conclusion, Ohio State brings home a championship.
Yep.
And Ryan D loses both coordinators, but now is a guy who's firmly entrenched, right?
Yeah, they asked me to pick out the pike, OC. I mean, I've got tabs open on my laptop here with shopping for good pikes. So it got to that point.
Pike shopping?
It got to that point for Ohio State fans.
I wouldn't think that you would be you would condone such aggression, James. But
I was appointed to do this. I had to take it seriously, even if I didn't completely align with the crazy people.
I don't know. That might be a violation of our company's HR policy. We might have to run that by somebody. But in any case, right, you've got the same thing in the NFL that you have in college football, where a dissatisfied fan base with unrealistic expectations thinks that every single game has to be won all the time, and that every player on every team has to be madly in love with everything that the team represents, that the coach's voice has to resonate like gospel truth to every single player, and if it doesn't, then you got to fire the guy. I mean, it's always going to be this way with every fan base, but the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles were part of that kingdom, wanted Nick Sirianni to be done, and now he's delivered them a Super Bowl, another Super Bowl, and the same was true with Ohio State and Ryan Day. It's just the parallels are too strong for me to ignore. It's just hilarious and ironic and whatever else. It cracks me up. And then, of course, the Jalen Hurts thing. Look, we've gotten a couple texts to this effect, and I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts is the reason that the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. Like, he did not operate in a vacuum. He didn't live by himself and single-handedly deliver a victory. The defense, especially in the first half, was the biggest story of the game. Philadelphia and Vic Fangio absolutely dominated the Chiefs, and they deserve a ton of credit. But because this is football, and because of the personalities and the player names involved, you were going to watch Patrick Mahomes, and you were going to believe as a football fan that anytime that guy had the ball in his hands, it's going to be a scoring drive. He's incredibly dangerous. He's going to find the right receiver. He's going to do the right thing with his legs. He's probably going to campaign to the referees and get a flag one way or another that nobody else was going to get. And that whole thing that you were expecting from Patrick Mahomes and you were thinking was a foregone conclusion with Patrick Mahomes, it was actually Jalen Hurts that on most of the Eagles' possessions was finding the right receivers and adjusting to the defense and using his legs in a timely fashion and not relying on them too much, still staying within the framework of the playbook and all those things. And that was the narrative that was supposed to be attached to Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Hurts doing that in a Super Bowl puts him in a different category, not just like these meaningless rankings of QBs, but now you know that Jalen Hurts is a guy on the big stage, in the big game, with the proper amount of support. You can trust that guy not just to manage the game, not just to not turn the ball over, but to be a reason, to be the biggest reason offensively at least, why your team is able to get over the hump. That is not insignificant. That is actually crazy important for the Philadelphia Eagles to know about Jalen Hurts. The number one question for every single franchise in the NFL and every single program in college football to have to answer is, who is your quarterback, and can that person be relied upon in high-pressure situations, in meaningful games? Can that person deliver you victories? We know that's true about Joe Burrow. We know that's true about Josh Allen. We know that's true about Patrick Mahomes. Most people think that's true about Brock Purdy. Decisions have been made contract-wise that is true of Jordan Love, right? I mean, just look at the salaries. And Jalen Hurts, the Philadelphia Eagles already committed a lot of money to Jalen Hurts, but then there was that thing. There was that sentiment like, yeah, but what happens if it comes down to you? Are you going to be the guy that can deliver us to the promised land? And the answer now is yes, right? Of course the defense set him up in a great situation. Of course the defense deserves the credit for doing that. Of course Cooper DeJean with the pick six and the lead build and the momentum of a game like the Super Bowl, obviously all of that benefits Jalen Hurts. But I hope, James, and I think this is how it will work out. I think that both Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, who we talked about last week, had the largest degree of pressure was on those two personalities heading into the Super Bowl. I think that both of those guys get to heave a huge sigh of relief after this game that, like, okay, at least for now, that conversation is absolutely over. Nobody gets to question us for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I would think that it is. Now, I'd be very curious if the scenario that we talked about last week plays out, OC, where they're maybe a couple games under 500 or they're right at 500 halfway through the year, knowing how volatile of a fan base the Philadelphia Eagles fan base is and how expectations of we're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender every year now have ratcheted it up in the last 5-6 seasons since they won their first Super Bowl under Doug Peterson. I'd be curious to see what we're talking about at that point if they're not, the best team in the NFC about midway through the season, or one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the NFC vying for the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Because I could absolutely see, even though they won a Super Bowl today and less than a year ago at that point, they could be. I could see the conversation start to turn. Oh well, is he the guy long term? Nick Sirianni. Is Jalen Hurts the quarterback long term? As crazy as that sounds, I would not put it past Philadelphia Eagles fans.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, the Super Bowl halftime show. What did you think of the Super Bowl halftime show? Best moment for me, Serena Williams randomly showing up and dancing. That was the coolest thing ever. I'm a huge Serena fan. I think the most dominant female athlete probably ever, certainly of our time. And the fact that they somehow convinced her to just make a 10-second cameo appearance in a Super Bowl halftime show, I guess because of some feud with Drake, is just phenomenal.
As trying to take a shot at Drake. We all heard about the Kendrick Lamar Drake feud from not that long ago, so that was fun.
It was interesting for me because it was the first Super Bowl halftime show that I have watched, and been like, oh, yeah, okay, they're playing to a different audience now. I'm old.
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it. It's just like that was not like there. Kendrick decided to do it his way, to not have a bunch of the guest appearances. He played his hits, but he didn't like do any covers, right? And I'm not exaggerating. Every other Super Bowl halftime show that I can remember is like, okay, this is the number one kind of like pop culture presence right now, or a top 5 pop culture presence right now, or it's a group of people that are leaning heavily into the nostalgia, and they do like samples of other people's songs, or they bring in like, a guest appearance, and Snoop Dogg's got Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh, okay, I understand this. Like this is my childhood, right, or whatever. Like the Usher one, when Usher did the halftime show, it was just like, oh, cool, I am now back in middle school, and I was watching. It was a mixed audience at my house. We hosted some people. And it was like my brothers and sisters-in-law are a lot younger than I am. My wife is a lot younger than me, so they're even younger than her. And they were just like, wait, you don't know this song? And Kendrick Lamar is playing like one of his hits. And I'm like, no, I don't know this song. Sorry, I listen to sports talk radio all day. I do sports talk radio. I don't listen to the radio. I'm not like up with the times on music. Again, I enjoyed the performance just fine, but I knew 2 of those songs, like tiny little chorus parts of 2 of those songs. And I was like, okay. So for the first time, James, I had to legitimately, like an old person, I had to go in and be like, okay, what did everyone else think of the halftime show? Was that good? Was that bad? Because I thought it was fine, but they weren't playing to me as the audience, James Peterson. They were doing it to you.
Yeah, well, they might have been playing to my age group, OC, but I didn't know anything about. I didn't know any of his songs either. So I felt like I was watching the production and going, this is kind of a cool show. I don't know any of these songs, but it's kind of a cool show. I was with you. I probably knew the choruses of like 2 or 3 of those songs, but I thought it was a entertaining Super Bowl halftime show. Now, though, we'll have to ask people who actually listen to Kendrick Lamar and are Kendrick Lamar fans or even rap fans to be able to tell us if the musical part of it was good. But I thought that the presentation was better than what we've had in a long time from a halftime show.
I need to know more about the Drake and Kendrick feud, because I guess a lot of the stuff had to do with that.
Yeah, there was a few. Serena Williams was not the only nod to that funny. Feud.
Like, these younger people at my house watching the game, this, like, one thing would happen on the screen. They'd be like, oh, no way, Drake. And I'm looking at it like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
What is it?
I didn't pick up on most of it either.
It is the first time, at least in a sporting event, I've been like, I'm old now. Okay, cool. Yeah. But I'm fine with it. We're here at Belliston Jewelry in Ogden, 1155 36th Street, 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner from Weber State University. And the deals are killer. The selection is plentiful. $129 purchase will get you a free dozen roses for your Valentine. Joe's been very kind to have us here all day. Joe, remounting stones. This is a thing that you're able to do, willing to do, excited about doing. If someone's got, an old family heirloom that maybe isn't the style that they're looking for, but it's got that big heritage rock in it, you can set that in something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only are we able to, we are expert in it. What I mean by that is, if you were to bring in old gemstones, a pair of earrings, a ring or 2, and you're like, hey, I want to make something out of this. We inherited this. If you were to just walk around any jewelry store and look in their showcase, you're never going to find a ring that you love and that just happens to fit your gemstones, right? Well, that's where we come in. We have the ability to customize it. What we'll do is we'll carefully measure, and we actually have a 3D scanner. So we'll scan your gemstones and measure them, put them in our digital software, and then design whatever design you want to fit your gemstones. It saves you a ton of money, and you get exactly what you want.
I say mom and pop shop in the most affectionate way, not to downplay the significance of your business, but do most private jewelers, whatever the right term is for it, have the level of technological capability that you have? I mean, you really have invested in customizing jewelry and being able to deliver every service necessary.
Yeah, you're right. No, most don't. Most jewelry stores don't even consider a 3D scanner. I mean, that's something I had to hunt for just to get, because I could see the potential of it. Yeah, but between our jewelers, we have multiple jewelers. We cast in-house. We have 3D printers and a CNC milling machine. We have all sorts of things. In fact, one of the cheapest ways you can personalize a piece of jewelry, really make it special, is with an engraver. We have a laser engraver. We've done all sorts of things, from simple messages to actually images of people's faces.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we've done one where people have passed away, and we've done like little pendant type things, with their person's image on it. So you can really make special things with that.
Look, they can do anything here at Belliston. If your plans are not nearly so grand as a fully custom piece of jewelry, that's fine. Come in. The selection here is massive. Engagement rings, wedding bands, necklaces, every imaginable piece of jewelry, and they've got something for every budget. So come on down. Before Friday, fellas, you're running out of time. Ladies, you're running out of time to please your Valentine. BellistonJewelry.com or 1155 36th Street in Ogden. When you come in, tell them OC sent you and that you're going to buy $129 or more so you can get that free dozen roses. All right, we're talking a little Utah Jazz next with Andy B. Larson. Don't go anywhere. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Tonight to the Indiana Pacers, 119-112. Nice save by Flip out front. The first triple on the way. So he's got pulled that lighter out, didn't he?
Oh, my God.
I'm not going to lie. I thought Jordan Clarkson was going to be off this roster by now, but Jordan Clarkson 3 on a broken play. Saturday, the Jazz lost to the Clippers in L.A. Sound courtesy of Smith Entertainment Group Media. Craig Bolerchak, Thurl Bailey on the call. Clarkson playing some pretty good basketball, too. Jazz back in action tonight in L.A., 8:30 on ESPN. And it is supposed to be Luka Doncic, his Lakers debut. Is that actually happening? Well, maybe Andy Larson knows the real story here. He joins us to talk all things NBA and your Utah Jazz. Andy, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Luka has been upgraded to probable for tonight. Will he be making his Lakers debut against the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, he's going to play. I mean, it's both him and LeBron upgraded to probable. Probable in the NBA world means 98% playing, right? Like, so he's going to play. There's too much build-up into this game. Frankly, they've put Luka Doncic shirts on, it looks like, every seat of the lower bowl in the Staples Center. I guess it's Crypto.com Arena now. And, yeah, this is one of the biggest games of the NBA season, and weirdly enough, the Jazz are playing in it.
The Jazz get to be a footnote in the trade and then also in the debut of Luka. So it's all coming full circle for the Utah Jazz with this Lakers situation. So a couple questions about this. How is the experiment going to work? How's it going to look with Luka and LeBron? We talked about the big picture stuff like, wow, Luka, who gets criticized for not being overly professional, overly in shape. He's now alongside one of the guys who is the archetype for that professionalism and keeping himself game ready all the time. So that's great. But actual X's and O's on the floor basketball, who has to adjust their game more?
I think probably Luka at first, because Luka has never played with somebody like LeBron, right? Like with someone who can have the ball in his hands that much, who really can create a little bit, like. But the truth is, you know, what they should do and what I suspect that they will do is have 48 minutes of one of those guys on the floor, you know, so you never have a bench lineup with one of those guys out, or sorry, both of those guys out. And then you kind of allow them to just kind of run the show for all 48 minutes. And I think, yeah, you're going to have some trade-offs where, you know, at the end of the game, it's going to be interesting who has the ball in their hands. And I think that's going to be like politics as much as anything. But like on the court, I think it does work because they both cut well. They're both kind of smart players. When they want to defend, I think they're both pretty good defenders. Both are pretty lazy. And so like, but if you get into a playoff situation, I think you're in a better spot with them. I do think it's basically going to work quite well. I don't really believe in the rest of the Lakers supporting cast, so I don't think they're like an NBA Finals contender right now, but I think they're, you know, kind of in that second tier below the best teams in the league and you know, are in I think at least a better spot than they were 2 weeks ago.
They thought they were going to have another fresh face on the roster as well. Mark Williams was supposed to be coming to fill that hole at center, and that trade was rescinded. I don't remember the last time a trade was rescinded, but I'm not saying it's crazy uncommon. I just truly don't remember. Were you somewhat surprised by this? Is it more common than I'm giving it credit for? And how bad does it hurt the Lakers that they weren't able to get this Williams thing done?
Yeah, it's been a couple of years at least, and you know, and I think there are only kind of a handful in NBA history that have been rescinded like this. So definitely surprised. And frankly, what happens a lot in these situations where a guy fails a physical is the team will go through the team with the trade kind of anyway because they, you know, there's a significant cost to having made the trade. You know, like Dalton Connect and Cam Reddish know that they can be traded at any time and maybe aren't as highly valued by their team as they thought. Mark Williams, same boat, you know, now has to go back to Charlotte rather than playing with two Hall of Fame legendary kind of players. That's got to be a little weird for him. There's, you know, usually there's just kind of this momentum that forces a trade through anyway, but whatever the Lakers found in that physical must have been really significant, really severe, so that they didn't feel good about having him in the long term, because now they're really, really short at the big man position. You know, like they have to rely on Jackson Hayes a lot, who is frankly a replacement level center in the league, and you know, maybe they can go out and get someone on the buyout market like an Alex Len or whoever, but like it's going to be one of those kind of guys that was waived by another team that you're going to have to rely on in the playoffs. And yeah, I do think it makes them significantly worse to not have a Mark Williams anymore.
So for the Utah Jazz, who were not able to move anything significant, it didn't seem, before this trade deadline, and now Jordan Clarkson playing great basketball. I don't know if that means they beat the Lakers, but they weren't able to, I guess, from a personnel standpoint, from an attrition standpoint, they weren't able to help the tank, at least on paper. Now, how do they manage the rest of this season with a relatively consistent roster?
Yeah, I mean they're going to have the kind of what happened over the last month, where you're just going to see guys sit out a lot of games for fake injuries, right? Like this one, and you can kind of pick and choose based on who the opponent is, and I think it's reasonable the Jazz are playing nearly everyone tonight because they think that they're going to kind of lose to the Lakers either way. And you're also on national TV, and that restricts the number of games, number of players you can rest. That being said, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of, it's just Lowry, I would bet he plays 10 or 15 of these next 30 games. I mean, John Collins sat out the last game for rest. I think you see more of that. Colin Sexton legitimately does have an ankle sprain, but, I think they slow play his return a little bit. And, Jordan Clarkson, kind of same thing. Like, you can just go up and down the roster and not play many of these guys, many of these games in order to lose as much as possible for the next, like I said, 30 games remaining.
Now, I think I've asked you about this before, but it's the reality now. Because no significant personnel has been moved off the roster, finding the correct balance of everyone understanding the assignment, knowing that you are trying to better your position in the upcoming draft lottery, but everyone on this roster is at a different point in their career. You've got guys with a ton of experience, guys that are aging veterans who only have a certain amount of time left in the NBA. You've got a coach who's a competitive guy and wants to show everyone that he knows how to win when the time is right and when the roster is right, and he can win basketball games. But wait, don't do it right now. Maintaining this balance and knowing that these next 30-ish games you have to stink. And the job is not actually to win basketball games. And you're a guy who's fully healthy, and you're sitting down and you're watching a couple of nights go by where you're supposed to be out there. Like, how does this team, how does the franchise, not just the players, but how does the franchise get through a period like this? Because it feels like it's a difficult thing for me to manage.
Yeah, it is. And, I think you lose a significant number of fans for, the short run. And, props to them, though, for filling the Delta Center anyway. I think that's been a pretty remarkable part of the story, is that, like, even with the team essentially announcing that it's trying to lose games, fans are still showing up. But you're right. Like, the coaching staff, this is hard on them. It's hard on I think, obviously the front office is driving this, but they don't love that this is kind of the right thing to do. And in fact, delayed it a couple of years beyond probably where it was smart to do that. And then, like you mentioned the players, but for a John Collins or a Lowry Markkanen, it's hard to stay in a rhythm, and it's hard to play your best basketball when you're being pulled every other night for a fake injury, right? So, it's difficult. There's no doubt about it. It's the messy side of the NBA. I think, frankly, the rules should be changed in a way so that teams don't benefit from tanking. But it does just kind of suck for everyone involved. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
So we do a tank update where, we update everyone on, like, hey, are they the second worst team? Are they the third worst record? Do they have the third highest draft lottery odds? When the lottery actually happens, it is supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a game of chance that is increased or your chance is increased or decreased by your standing in that lottery picture. What is the line of demarcation as you've watched a little bit more of the college basketball, a little bit more from these prospects, knowing where, the talents are going to shake out and how good Cooper Flagg seems to be? Where is the lowest, or I guess it would be the highest acceptable number for the Utah Jazz to feel justified in having thrown away an entire season?
So, in my mind, it's probably number 3. And so, you've got Cooper Flagg, who I think is clearly the best prospect in the draft, and everyone else largely does too. And I think by a significant margin based on what he's doing at Duke, at just barely turned 18, did a lot of it when he was 17. Like, it's really, really impressive stuff what Cooper's doing. Then you've got Dylan Harper, clearly the second best prospect, is just an all-around awesome point guard. That, for a team that needs an all-around awesome point guard, Dylan would be an awesome fit. Then third is probably Ace Bailey, also at Rutgers, like just a tremendous shot maker, takes such difficult shots, and honestly, you'd like for him to take better shots, but he makes them at a pretty high rate and is 6'9" and talented and really, really good. Well, after that, you get a little bit, you start to have more question marks on guys, I think it's fair to say, where maybe a little bit less projectable in the NBA, maybe a little bit more work they need to do on their games in order for them to be like clear NBA stars moving forward. And so I think it's probably, the top three where maybe 4, but really top 3 where you start to feel good about, hey, this was probably worth it.
Did you have a horse in the Super Bowl race, Andy?
No, I wanted a close game. I guess I, like the rest of America, enjoyed the Chiefs not winning 3 in a row. But yeah, I was mostly just watching for a good time last night.
You're younger than me, so how dialed in on that halftime show were you? Like how the nuance of the K-Dot and Drake feud. Are you like an appreciator of these things? Because I was laughing, sitting back and laughing and being like, this is the first time I'm just an old guy who doesn't understand what I'm supposed to be watching right now. But I was watching with younger people and they were loving it. So where do you fall?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that second boat more. Look, I'm not the coolest cat there is, right? Like I'm a 33-year-old white guy. I'm a huge nerd. I was a math major. But it's hard to be like kind of in the NBA circuit, right, and not know about these things and not hear about them kind of on a regular basis. And so it was a lot of fun. And we were me, Sarah Todd, the rest of Jazz kind of beat writers, Brian Miller. We're all watching it at a yard house right next to Crypto Arena, and it was really cool. Like just. I don't think that the people at the Yard House were that engaged in the game itself, especially because it was a blowout. But halftime, everyone peaked up a little bit, and there were people standing and dancing to the whole thing. There were people singing along. Like it was actually pretty cool. So I think agreed. Not for everyone, I guess, but I think for the demographic that it hit for, I think it hit really pretty hard.
All right, that's cool. I like that. This will be the last thing, and then I'll cut you loose. You brought up, you have to, if you're in the NBA circles, you kind of have to be at least like somewhat aware of these things. And the NFL has its pop culture moments, like obviously the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce thing has been the most significant one as of late. And then, of course, the NBA is very ingrained in like certainly urban culture, hip hop culture, black culture, etc. And the sort of like juxtaposition of the league, the situations going on politically and culturally in the United States of America, like where can these leagues, or where can the NBA more specifically, I guess, meet people where they need to be on some of the big stuff that is I don't know, hard for folks to process right now? Big question with, I'm sure, a very simple answer from Andy Larson.
Yeah, like if I had a really good answer for that, I'd be making $5 million a year working for Adam Silver right now. I mean, look, there's no doubt, like, the one thing that has maintained cultural relevance in a world where it's easier than ever before to split attention and everything else is the NFL. And the NFL has this really unique ability to stay really relevant culturally to, like, all of America in a way that, like, the NBA hasn't. And I think you kind of have to figure out who those stars are. And I think hopefully get more attention paid to the game itself is useful. I think one, like, big difference between NBA and NFL broadcasts is, like, NFL broadcasts have this reverence for the game in a way that NBA broadcasts are really quick to criticize what's going on the floor. Now, I'm not saying you need to be, to be the PR people for the NBA too, but it's just, taking the actual game itself seriously when, I think for the NBA, it's the off-court stuff that draws the most attention. But yeah, from like a cultural point of view, I wonder if there does kind of get to a point where the NBA and its familiarity with, with urban values, so whatever you want to say, becomes more of a counterculture thing and becomes more of a movement thing, which would be interesting given this current political moment. Yeah. But, I think the league's got to figure out a whole lot of other stuff, like, frankly, the tanking stuff we've been talking about all segment long. Like, in the end, I think the product itself has to be good out there in order for it to, like, really, again, have that top level of cultural relevance. And the NFL has that, and the NBA, I don't know that it does right now.
That's Andy Larson, does a great job always, and we're lucky to have him join us on the show, Utah Jazz and NBA beat writer over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Andy, enjoy the game. Hopefully, I trust you. I think it'll be Luka and LeBron and the Lakers against the Utah Jazz. That's a moment. That's a cool thing to be there for. So thanks.
Yep, it sounds like the whole NBA world is coming into LA for this. Really, really looking forward to tonight. It'll be fun. Thanks, OC.
Great stuff as always from Andy Larson. We'll wrap things up next on the Sean O'Connell Show. One last segment from Belliston Jewelers at 1155 36th Street in Ogden. Come see us, grab some candy, grab some jewelry, get the flowers with it. $129 purchase gets you a dozen free roses for Valentine's Day. Fellas, ladies, you only have 4 more days to get that Valentine's purchase done, so let Belliston help you out. We'll talk with Joe, the man behind the operation, here next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, Sean O'Connell Show closing things out here on a Monday. The Monday after the Super Bowl. Oof. Football season is done. It's hard. All right, we've got topical trivia. 2 tickets to see Hardy, May 29th, Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. Ticket pre-sale starts Thursday at 10 a.m. You can win them if you are able to answer for us at 877-353-0700. The sack leader for the Philadelphia Eagles in this game, who is he? How many sacks did he have? The defense came up huge in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes was harassed, harangued, incapable of getting clear picture windows, threw a couple interceptions. A lot of that was because of the pressure Vic Fangio and his defense put together. There were several guys that got to Patrick Mahomes, but who had the most sacks and how many for those two tickets? 877-353-0700. We're here at Belliston Jewelers, getting you ready for Valentine's Day. $129 purchase gets you free roses, a dozen of them. We've got some giveaways here: Weber State bracelet, Weber State ring, Weber State dog tags, candy, all that stuff. Come see us at Belliston as we wrap things up. 1155 36th Street in Ogden, right around the corner from Weber State. All right, what have we not talked about, Joe? What do we need to get off our chest before we get out of here?
Well, I want to mention that, you may be thinking $129. Yeah, right. You have things that are way more expensive. Well, we do. We have a lot of really fine jewelry in here. Believe it or not, I brought in a lot of jewelry of super low price points just for Valentine's Day. We do permanent jewelry here. That would be a really fun date. We do it so permanent jewelry is where they weld on a bracelet, so like a little chain, so there's no clasp. So
cool.
So it stays on all the time.
Stays on.
Yep.
All right.
Do it right here in the store. We've got small hoop earrings. We have pendants, necklaces, colored gemstones, birthstones, a lot of pink and red jewelry, and we have a lot of heart jewelry. So just a lot of awesome options in really affordable price points.
And I want to talk about, before we get out of here, that you do the digital vault.
Correct.
Where this is such a cool thing you were telling me about before the show started. You can actually scan people's like heirloom pieces, etc., so that in the event of a loss, in the event of a situation, you can recreate that piece of jewelry.
Exactly. Yes, it's a 3D scanner. It works hand in hand. I mean, it is CAD, computer-aided design. So we scan your jewelry. We also take a video of your jewelry. We have a little turntable. And that way we have record of what it is that you have. We email you a copy of the scan and the video, and we keep one here in-house. Now, this isn't insurance, but it is a form of insurance. Jewelry insurance is something that I recommend that everyone have on high-end jewelry, not on low-end jewelry. But if you have that precious piece of jewelry, that engagement ring, something you inherited, a family heirloom, I highly recommend getting it in the digital vault. That way, if something, heaven forbid, would ever happen, we can recreate it.
It's such a cool thing. They'll do it. They'll do the digital vault for you. They can create the custom jewelry for you. If you're looking for something right at that $129 price point, so you can get the free dozen roses. They brought stuff in special for that. The selection here is incredible. The service is incredible. Everyone's been so great to us today. Thanks to everyone who stopped by, the listeners who stopped by. Joe, thanks to you for having us out here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming out.
I'm telling you, gentlemen and ladies, Belliston will put you in the situation you want to be in come Valentine's Day. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what I'm saying? You want to get on everyone's good side? Belliston is where to do it. Belliston.com, 1155 36th Street in Ogden. Tell them OC sent you. We turn it over to the drive with Spence Checketts. Who's holding it down, James? It'll be Porter and Tony again?
Yeah, Porter Larson, Tony Parks filling in for Spence, who's coming back from vacation today. So that'll be Porter and Tony on the drive.
All right. We'll keep talking about the wrap-up of the football season tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, for listening today. Sean O'Connell Show out. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.